Hi! Hi! Oh, why am I here? Oh, hi! Hi! Welcome! I am Billy Goose, the silly goose. How's everyone doing tonight? Oh my gosh, you have to wake up in 5 hours! Oh, that's so soon! Oh my gosh, well thank you for being here. Should you go to sleep when your parents come back home, which is in next minutes? Honestly, if you need to sleep, go to sleep. Don't let me keep you up. I feel so bad. I don't want you to be sleep deprived. But I appreciate you coming in and saying hi. Oh my god. Today we have a very fun stream. We're gonna be analyzing Twilight. As you can see here. Bum bum bum. I'm also dressed as Wednesday Addams today, so let's do a fit check real quick. I feel cute. I've got my little Converse. Yeah. Don't worry, you're always sleep deprived. That's not good. How are you gonna grow? Sleep is so good for your health. It's important. You don't want to get sick and stuff. But, so we're gonna go through each and every one of the movies and explain what happens in them and give a little bit of opinions and stuff on the characters and just everything. I don't know. I have 8 pages of 12-point single-spaced font ready to go. So, if you can tell, I love Twilight. I love it because it's so cringy and bad. I used to love it because I thought it was the best thing ever created as a tween. But, yeah. You watch it as a grown-up and you're like, wow! This is different. This is different. Sorry, I had to drink some of my Sunny D, because vitamin C is very important as well to prevent being sick. But you're already a grown teenager, so you'll be fine, maybe. Yeah, but I'm worried. I'm worried about you. I don't wanna be a bad influence. Your parents are gonna hate me. You've never watched any of the Twilight things. Okay, well, now it's a good thing I'm educating everyone. We are gonna start with Twilight, the first movie, the first in the series, okay? This girl over here is Bella Swan. We meet her, let me actually go over the family trees real quick, because I think it's important that we know who I'm talking about in all of these. And I'm gonna just get, really small so I can show you everything, right? Our founding father of the Cullens, the Cullen clan, if you will, is Carlisle Cullen. He is a doctor. Dr. Carlisle Cullen. Okay, this is important. And the first person he turns is Edward, right? Edward was a victim of the Spanish plague, and he was dying. He was a 17-year-old boy, and Carlisle felt so bad for him that he decided, screw it, I'm going to turn him, which is really hard for vampires to do. The next person he turned was Esme, who is his wife. They are married. But technically Edward's older than Esme, but he also considers Esme his mom, so that's a little confusing, right? But Esme hasn't turned anybody. So you'll see here that they're technically together. He turned her, but she hasn't turned anybody, right? Then there's Rosalie, who I believe is the next person he turned, and she was the victim of a almost really bad, well, no, actually it was a really bad situation. There's no almost about it. Some guys pretty much jumped her and, did some bad things and left her bleeding in the streets, and she was about to die, and he was like, I can't let this beautiful life form go to waste. He married his mom, who's younger than... No. Esme is considered to be Edward's mom in the lore because she was churned at an older age, and since vampires don't age, she looks to be about, 40, and Edward looks to be 17, so she's considered his mother in their little lore. Yes. But Carlisle also turns Rosalie, like I said, because she was left victim and just in the streets, and he couldn't see her beautiful beauty and kindness go to waste, so he turned her. This is not in the movies, but there is an illustrated guide to the Twilight series, and we find out that Rosalie found Emmett. She found Emmett being attacked by a bear in the woods, and something about it made her, like, really sad, and she really loved him, so she carried him to Carlisle to change him, and they are mates. So Rosalie and Emmett are together. We need the support of the best Netflix original, Glitter Force and Glitter Force Doki Doki. Yeah! Welcome, ninja! I stumbled on my words. And then we have the other two Cullen siblings, right? Alice and Jasper. You'll notice that they are not technically connected to Carlisle because Carlisle did not turn them. Alice I think she was turned probably around the same time as Edward by somebody else. She is a prophet, so it's different. He also did not turn Jasper. Jasper was originally a soldier in the Confederate Army in the United States, and so we find out later he has like a southern accent and stuff. But they are not at all related. Like, technically they're not blood related. You can see here that these ones were turned. And these, you'll see who's all together. You'll notice that Edward does not have a mate. This is important because it sets us up for our whole thing, right? We'll get into where Bella ties into all of this later and her family, and then we'll get into the Coyote tribe later on. But let's take a moment to go back to Twilight, the first movie in the franchise. It's very good. It's very good. It's terrible, but it's very good. So this is Bella Swan, okay? She is moving in with her father, Charlie, after her mother, Renee, remarries to a minor baseball league player. Phil, we rarely hear about Phil. He's just kind of there for story development. We hear about him like once. He's okay. But she moves to the cold, rainy town of Forks, Washington, which is a stark contrast to the sunny Arizona where she lived with her mom. And she's kind of your typical, I'm not like other girls kind of teenager. She's quiet, moody, smart, like absolutely like almost every teenage girl I've ever encountered. But she feels excluded. She doesn't feel like she's part of anything, really. She doesn't really feel like she fits in. She's kind of lost. She has little memories of this place. She hasn't been here since she was 5 when her mother divorced her father. Hi! Welcome, Brittany, welcome! We are going over Twilight. We are on the first movie. But yeah, so she left the town of Forks at 5 with her mom. And, everybody's really warm and welcoming considering, and, like, they go to a diner, or she goes to a diner with her dad, and, like, this guy who used to play Santa is like, oh, do you remember me? I played Santa once. And, like, the waitress is super friendly, and she's like, oh, I haven't seen you in so long. And, you know, it's really nice of them considering Bella really only communicates through awkward mouth noises and weird glances and, like, really bad jokes that everybody thinks is, like, the most hilarious thing ever. So, you know, they're really welcoming, all things considered. Because, like, I swear, every other line Bella has is, like, that's all she says. That's all she says, okay? You could probably cut out all the dialogue in all of the Twilight movies and make a movie just of Bella going, ugh. So, that's the whole thing. But, later on we meet a couple more characters, because Charlie decides to buy Billy Black's truck. Billy Black is, like, not the founding father of the Coyote tribe, but, like, pretty high up there. He's one of the elders. He's very well respected in the community. And his son Jacob is the infamous Jacob, okay? Jacob Black. But Jacob helps Billy fix up his old truck so that Charlie can buy it and give it to Bella as kind of a welcome home present. And, you know, she's actually really grateful of this because, like, a lot of girls I know, if they got, like, a old, dingy, beat-up truck, they would be like, this is what I'm getting. But she was really appreciative. She's like, oh my god, it's so good, it's so good, it's so nice, this is perfect. And I mean, it's a really nice truck. You know, it's vintage, it's cool, it's red, it's a nice truck. But we basically just meet Jacob here, and like, I'm gonna be honest, in this first movie, we don't see Jacob very much. I know he's like a main love interest throughout the whole saga, but we don't see him like at all in the first movie. Like, he has a little crush on Bella, and it's like implied, but he's not a major player yet. So, cut to Bella's first day at school, right? And she is like swarmed by guys who want to bang her. I don't know what it is. Like, maybe it's the jacket and the like awkward stares and the weird mouth noises. Maybe it's just her charm. I don't know. But she was just like first greeted by Eric, who runs the school newspaper, and he wants to do a feature on her because nothing interesting ever happens in Forks, and like yada yada yada. We also meet Angela, who is like this nerdy girl. She's kind of quiet, but she has a huge crush on Eric. Like, it's very apparent she has a huge crush on Eric, which in the books, he is, Eric's kind of two different people. But they combine two characters to create this Eric guy. Also, side note, Eric looks like he should be a vampire. Like, I don't have a picture here. I should probably get a picture here. But he looks like he should be a vampire. He's just kind of like an emo boy a little bit. He's way too blinded by Bella's awkward mouth noises to notice Angela has a crush on him at first. And also blinded by the new girl is this Mike guy. He's kind of your typical nice guy, and he doesn't get the hint that Bella, like, literally couldn't care less about him. And we also meet Jessica. I swear, Jessica is, like, the most normal girl here, okay? Jessica is the most normal teen depicted in this series. She is hilarious, right? When we meet Jessica, it's at lunch, and she's kind of standoffish with Bella because she notices all the guys are kind of flocking to her, and she's like, oh my god, you're like the new toy. Like, and it's like middle school all over again. All the boys just want to play with the new toy. Which is accurate. Like, they don't know this girl at all, and they're already like thinking about inviting her to the dance and stuff. Like, I don't know. It's kind of weird. But, so Angela wants to help Eric get Bella in the paper, and Eric is like, no, the feature's dead, never bring it up again, Bella doesn't want to be in it. Is that Anna Kendrick's character? Yes, Jessica is played by Anna Kendrick. And so after that whole fiasco, Bella makes a couple jokes about how they're gonna just have to replace the feature with like eating disorders or the swim team stuffing their jock straps. And Jessica and Angela look at each other and they're just kind of like, that's actually kind of funny. But like, you can tell they don't know how to feel about Bella yet. But anyways, the Cullens walk in, right? The Cullens walk in looking all cool, looking all fresh, looking like the rich kids on campus. And Jessica makes really valid points about how the Cullens are weird as hell, okay? They're all adopted / fostered by Dr. Carlisle, which we kind of went over a little bit with the family chart. But also half of the siblings, or not even half the siblings, like all the siblings except for Edward are dating each other. And she makes a point like that's gotta be illegal, which I'm pretty sure it is because, like, if anybody's watched The Fosters, the Fosters clearly explain that that's not allowed in the fostering system or the adoption system, and kids will not be allowed to be adopted if they're banging their like foster brothers and sisters and stuff. So pretty sure that's illegal. And so she's explaining them. She's like, you know, Alice, she's like really weird, and that's Jasper, and he always just looks like he's in pain, which is pretty accurate reads. Like, Jasper always looks like he's in pain. And that would be because he's one of the newer vampires. He is the last one to go vegetarian, quote unquote, which vegetarian doesn't mean vegetarian. It means they don't eat people. So he does look like he's in pain all the time because he's constantly trying to remind himself not to eat people. And then walks in Edward, and she's like, that's Edward. He's kind of a jerk. Like, he doesn't think anybody's good enough for him. Don't even bother trying. And Bella's like, wasn't planning on it. But then they have, like Bella and Edward make these really awkward faces at each other. Like, she makes the most horn dog face, right? just staring at him. And then he's looking at her like, because he's confused. And we find out later it's because he can't read her thoughts. But honestly, I think that's just because Bella's so head empty. Because, like, how else do you explain that? You know? How else do you explain that? Maybe she just got nothing going on up there. And that's kind of like all we meet of the Cullens at first until biology class, right? This is where we're really interacting with Edward. So as she's walking in the classroom, she steps in front of a fan and her hair blows in his direction and he looks like he's gonna gag, right? He looks completely disgusted. Like, what did this girl have for lunch? Onions? That is the vibe it's giving, right? And so she literally sits down next to him because the teacher's like, yeah, you could just sit right there. And she gives herself a little sniff, like an attempt to be discreet sniff. We've all been there. We all forgot once or twice if we put on deodorant. Like, so she sniffs her hair and she's like, ugh. And then he kind of mostly ignores her. Like, he pushes the microscope closer to her and then just runs out of the classroom because he can't handle it. He just can't handle her stank. She catches him, like, right after class, talking to the guidance counselor, and he's like, I just want to switch classes, like, there's really nothing else. I could take physics, I could take this, I could take that. And she's like, I'm sorry. All of the classes are full. You'll just have to stay in biology. And Edward, like, storms out of the room with, like, a quote of, like, I guess I'll just have to endure it. Which also, what high school student says things like endure? Who says that? Anyways. Edward ends up missing a week of school, and Bella's like, what the hell? You know, like, first you give me the implication that I stink, then you're gone. Like, do you really hate me that much? But then one day she just comes back into biology class, and he's returned. Like, it's been a week. You haven't been here, right? You left me completely without a lab partner. I'm offended. So, all of a sudden, he's, like, wicked friendly, comparatively, right? Like, he hadn't said a single goddamn word to her. But now he's, like, asking her about the weather and stuff, and she's like, you're asking me about the weather? And he's like, I guess I am. And, so, it's very, very awkward. It's very, very awkward. And you can tell there's, like, there's supposed to be chemistry there, but you're, like, left kind of being like, why? And then he starts asking her relatively personal questions, but also evading any questions she asks him, right? So he'll be like, oh, why'd you move to the rainiest place if you hate the rain? Because also she says something like, he's like, oh, do you like the rain? And she's like, I don't really like anything that's cold or wet. And he's like, well, then why would you move to one of the coldest, wettest places in the States? Like, that's... But then she's like, oh, well, you know, my mom remarried and, like, whatever. And he's like, do you not like the guy? What's wrong with him? Like, just asking her, like, more and more personal questions. But when she's like, so where were you? Where were you for a week? He's like, I was out for personal reasons. Like, completely not answering the question, right? Whatever. And then we never hear about the mom's new husband again. Like, we never hear about him again. The extent that we know about him is he's a baseball player who, like, her mom married... And the whole reason Bella left was because she wanted her mom to be able to have a little bit more time with her new boo and stuff. Like, that's literally it. That's the only thing Phil has ever done. He married her mom and then now wants to take her on all these trips because he travels a lot. So, that's pretty much that, right? Cut to the high school parking lot, right? Some asshole is speeding through the icy high school parking lot. And he nearly hits another car, which causes him to Tokyo drift his van across the entire lot and nearly crushes Bella. But, you know, somehow Edward's spidey senses kick in, and just in time for him to stop the van with his brute strength. And, like, then he just kind of looks at her, gives her a once-over, almost like he's gonna kiss her, but then doesn't. And then he just, like, literally jumps on top of the car and escapes the scene. So, they take Bella to the hospital because... you know, she just nearly got crushed by a car. Clearly something's gotta be up with her. Like, maybe she banged her head, maybe she's got a couple scrapes, whatever. And the kid who almost hit her just keeps, like, apologizing. Like, I'm so sorry, Bella. I'm so sorry. And then Charlie walks in, and Dr. Carlisle walks in. This is the first time we really meet Dr. Carlisle. And And Charlie's like, I'm really concerned. You almost died, Bella. And she's like, yeah, but I didn't. So it's like not a big deal. And it's just really awkward. It's kind of really awkward. And so when Dr. Carlisle comes over, he starts asking her a couple questions, and she's like, yeah, it could have been so much worse. Like, I'm only alive thanks to your son. It's so crazy. He was nowhere near me, and then suddenly there he was. And Dr. Carlisle's just kind of like, oh, that's weird. And then he walks away because he's like, I don't know what the fuck to say to this girl. But he's kind of really only there to suss out the situation and see what Bella's like thinking, because nobody ever knows what Bella is thinking because she has no thoughts. Her head is empty. So she sees Edward in the hallway talking to Dr. Carlisle and Rosalie, and Rosalie is giving Edward a rash of shit like, this isn't just about you. Like, this could affect all of us. And Edward refuses to give any explanation to Bella. He's like, can't you just thank me and get over it? And she's like, I've gone through all the possibilities, including, like, radioactive spiders. Like, no joke, she thinks he could be Spider-Man, because, like, that was fucking weird. He was across the parking lot, and then suddenly he's just there to stop a car from hitting her. Like, it's kind of weird, right? Like, she knows something's up. He refuses to give any explanation, and then gaslights her a couple times, like, oh, it was just adrenaline. Oh, I wasn't near you. What are you talking about? Like, or I was, like, standing right next to you the whole time. What are you talking about? And so, like, whatever. So then they go on a field trip. She's really mad, like, that he won't give her any freaking answers, but he keeps asking her questions. So she's, like, supposed to go to Jacksonville or something to visit her mom, and he's like, what's in Jacksonville? And she's like, Floridians. And then she nearly, like, fucking falls on her ass in the greenhouse because she never watches where she's going, and she's always falling over, which is, like, probably the most relatable part about Bella. And he's like, oh, God, can't you just be a little more careful? I don't want to keep saving you, man. And then, like, he's like, I never said I didn't want to be your friend. I just think that we shouldn't be friends because being my friend is dangerous and you should stay away. And, like, she's always like, your back and forth is giving me whiplash. And he's like, it's not that I don't want to be your friend. We could be friends. Like, he literally won't make up his mind. Like, do you want to be her friend? Do you want her to leave you the fuck alone? Do you think she stinks? Like, he's not clear at all. Not clear. But, they start kind of being friends. And so she invites him to a beach with the rest of her friends because they invite her to La Push, which is a beach in Forks, Washington. And it's on the Native American reservation of the Quixote tribe. And he's like, which beach? And when she says La Push, he's like, no, I can't go. And she's like, why? Is there something wrong with it? And he's like, it's just too crowded. Cut to an empty beach scene where it's literally just her and her friends. And suddenly we run into Jacob again. Like, this is probably the last time we see Jacob in this movie, if I'm being honest. And so he explains the old legend of how the Cullens aren't allowed on Quixote land because of this whole long-standing history of the Quixotes being descendants of wolves, and the Cullens are lying about what they are, but they said that they won't hurt people, so that they signed a treaty. Whole big thing, right? Bella literally ignores any part that's not about Edward. She doesn't give a shit about the descendants of wolves. She just wants to know, like, what's up with the Cullens, right? So she's, like, obsessed with it at this point. And she agrees to go dress shopping with her friends, but then couldn't be less interested the whole time. So, like, Anna Kendrick and Angela are trying on dresses, and they're like, oh, what do you think this looks like? And she's like, it looks great. And they're like, you said that about, like, the last 15 dresses. Like, are you interested in this at all? And she's like, you know what? I'm actually going to head to a bookstore. I'll meet you at the restaurant later. Like, completely bails on her friends to go to the bookstore to just research more about Edward. Like, girl, get a life. So after she does a whole bunch of research and checking out her books and stuff, she walks past, like, this burly gang of men and nearly gets gangbanged on her way back to meet up with her friends. And Edward pops up out of nowhere in his sick Volvo and starts staring off the guys until they back off. Because they're like, you just made a big mistake, buddy. But then Edward just looks at him like, and they start backing off. And then he's like, Bella, get in the car. And he hops in his little Volvo and does some sick little, like, donuts and shit to go backwards and, like, get the fuck out of there. And then they flee the scene, and he returns Bella to her friends, and he's rip shit. He's like, you don't know what they were thinking. You don't know what they were thinking. And she's like, yeah, and you do? What? Like, you don't know what was gonna happen. I mean, like, granted, it probably wasn't good, but, like, how do you know what they were gonna do? And so he gets her back to her friends, and he buys, like, the whole thing is weird, right? Because they're really concerned, which rightfully so. Rightfully so. They're like, you bailed on us. You weren't here when you were supposed to be. We thought you died. Until Edward's like, oh, you know, we just ran into each other, and I wanted to make sure she got here safe, but since you guys already ate, why don't I buy Bella some dinner, and, like, you can just go, I'll drive her home personally. And they're like, oh my god, he's so considerate. And so he buys her dinner, not eating anything himself. Like, he can't even pretend to act normal. Can't even pretend. And then he tells her he can read minds. Like, just dishes that, just drops that. Like, yeah, I can read the minds of everybody in this room, but I can't read yours. Which makes Bella think something is wrong with her, and he just loves that. He loves the fact that, like, she thinks something's wrong with her because he can't read her mind. Like, why would you love that? But he literally says, like, that's crazy. So he brings her home, and she decides to do more research, and she's like, oh my god, he's a vampire. So she goes out into the middle of the woods alone, like a freaking weirdo, and just is like, I know what you are. And then he, like, pops up behind her out of nowhere, being like, say it out loud. Which, like, also, this would be a hilarious spot in the movie for her to just be like, an asshole, you know? But, like, unfortunately she doesn't, so she's just like, vampire. And, so then he's like, I'm a killer! I'm a monster! And he shows her some of his cool vampire features, and he's like, you should be afraid of me! But also, he's telling her she should be afraid, and then he rips off his shirt and goes and stands in the sun, and he's like, that's the skin of a killer, Bella. But, you know, she doesn't care, because in classic horror film style logic, she's like, oh my god, no, I'm not afraid of you, I'm only afraid of losing you. And so then they lay on the floor of the woods, just staring blankly at each other, which is a recurring theme in this saga. Like, they just stare at each other a lot. And at this point, you're like, there's no chemistry here, girl. Why are you obsessed with him? Like, what happened? At what point in time was he ever even nice to you besides saving you from that car? Like, what else was he supposed to do? Let you die? So the next day he drives her to school and he puts his arm around her. He's like, I'm going to hell anyways, so, like, why not? And everybody's staring at them because it's like, what? This kid has been single this whole time. Like, he shows no interest in anybody. This new girl comes to town and suddenly they're thick as thieves. Like, freaking weird. And so, you know, they haven't even had any real conversations. They're just bickering all the time. People are confused. But then he shows up at her house later after school and just, like, pulls out dents from her truck because, you know, there was some body damage on that truck from him bracing against it while the other car crushed into his arm. But he just pulls it out. Like, it's no big deal. And then he invites her into the vampire den. And Bella, being Bella, is not concerned at all with any of the actual dangers. She's concerned his parents won't like her. Which, like, I mean, I get that. That's a valid thing. Meeting your boyfriend's parents is, like, scary, right? But that's what you're concerned about entering the vampire's lair? Not the fact that they might literally eat you? So she shows up to his house, and she's, like, really surprised. It's so nice and open. It's sunshiny. It's beautiful. Somehow none of the vampires are glistening in here. Like, I don't know. That's supposed to be a thing, but none of them are sparkly here. And he's like, I told them they didn't have to do this. And they're watching a cooking show trying to make her a nice Italian meal. Because even though they don't know if she's Italian, they're like, her name's Bella. I'm sure she'll like it. Like, your first name doesn't even necessarily have anything to do with where you're from. So, like, awkward assumption on their part, especially because her last name's Swan, which doesn't sound very Italian to me. But whatever. So they make her, like, this whole lasagna and stuff. And then Edward's like, She already ate out of consideration of the fact that vampires don't eat. And Rosalie is so pissed, right? Rosalie's pissed. She's like, this is just great. And she smashes a perfectly good lasagna onto the floor. And then, like, it was weird, right? Like, it was awkward interactions because she storms off and Bella's like, why doesn't she like me? But Alice is super nice, right? She just wants to be Bella's friends, and because she can see into the future, she's like, I just know me and Bella are gonna be great friends. And like, she's honestly the realist. She's the homegirl of homegirls, right? She's the best person in this movie, like, friendship wise. She doesn't want any harm to befall on anybody. She just wants to do what's best for everyone. I love Alice. And then Jasper still looks in pain. Like, that's pretty much a recurring theme as well, as Jasper always looks like he's in pain. And then after that, like, awkward interaction, he immediately takes Bella to his bedless bedroom because vampires don't sleep, so there's no bed in there. And she gets all excited about his music collection. And it's like the first real conversation they have the entire movie, right? So she turns on his stereo being like, oh my god, what are you listening to? And Debussy starts playing. And she's like, oh my god, Claire de Lude's my jam! And Edward tries to make her dance, but she's like, I'm not scared of you. You can't make me dance. And he's like, you shouldn't have said that. And then he, like, picks her up and runs out the window with her into the middle of the woods. So, like, so much for meeting the family. Like, all they did to meet was drop a lasagna on the floor. But then, you know, they just hang out in a tree. He literally runs her to the middle of the woods, and they just sit in the top of the tree talking. Which, like, I guess is good because they haven't really talked about anything the entire movie. I stand by that. So, after that awkward meetup, Edward really wants to meet Charlie, because, you know, he's an old-fashioned soul. I mean, he died during the Spanish plague or Spanish flu or whatever, and he's just an old-fashioned guy, and before he takes Bella on a real date, he wants to meet her father. So Charlie is kind of put off by the fact that she's hanging out with the Cullens because they're just known for being weird. Is that the spider monkey part? I think so. I'm pretty sure that's the spider monkey part where he's like, hang on tight, spider monkey. There's so many good quotes in this movie. There's so many good bad quotes in this movie. But like Charlie is the best dad ever, right? Like, he doesn't get why she wants to hang out with Edward, but he also isn't going to stop her because, like, he doesn't have any reason to. It's an all-time classic line in cinema. Yes! And so he's just like, don't forget your pepper spray, Bella. Like, I got you pepper spray for your birthday. Like, please hang on to it. Because there's some weird shit going on in town. Because, also, side note, like, there is a subplot of, like, there's something killing humans in Forks, and it's, like, really violent, and they think it's an animal, but plot twist, it's other vampires. So, Edward introduces himself to Charlie and is like, don't worry, I'll keep Bella perfectly safe, we're just gonna go play baseball with my family. Charlie is a little confused, which I think is just because he knows it's gonna rain. He's like, why the fuck is your family playing baseball in the rain, you know? And so they show up to the field where the family's all dressed in matching baseball uniforms. And, like, this is one of the best scenes in cinematic history, okay? This baseball scene is epic. Alice looks so hot. And she's like, they're like, oh, it's the only time we can play baseball because the thunder hides our baseball playing. Because that's so fucking normal. And then the game gets interrupted by the Black Eyed Peas, right? Like, not actually the Black Eyed Peas, but this group of 3 vampires who looks incredibly similar to the Black Eyed Peas. I don't know why, but, like, it's crazy, right? And it takes, like, 0 seconds for Bella's stank to reach one of those vampires, right? And they, like, all of a sudden, all of the vampires, like the 3 Black Eyed Peas in the Cullen clan, are in a stare down, hissing at each other, just like, and they're all of a sudden, like, they're so ready to fight to the death over her protection. I don't know why. She's just a girl. Like, what do they care? They're eternal people. Like, why would they care? But Edward loves her, so they're like, no, she's part of this family now. We protect our family. And Edward Edward gets her out of there, but he's really worried because he read one of their thoughts, and one of the vampires who show up is known for being like an insane hunter. He hunts for sport. So basically, Edward just gave him the biggest challenge of all time, like trying to hunt down another vampire's love interest. And the hunter is very excited about this, right? Like, he's so excited to like kill Bella. So, you know, they're speeding away, and he's like, you know, we have to get out of here. We have to get out of here. She's like, but what about my dad? What about my dad? We can't just leave him. The vampire hunter's gonna go, like, over there and, like, blah, 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 blah. And he's, like, trying to be like, no, your dad will be fine. Your dad will be fine. But she's like, no, we're gonna save my dad. So he's like, okay, if you're gonna go back, like, to your dad, freaking, you have to do something to get away from him. You have to give him an excuse to leave. Just say what you ever you have to say to get out of there. And she really doesn't want to fight with her dad. She's like, I can't hurt him. But, you know, Charlie just wants to talk things out. So she storms off and drives away. No, but not before being like, you know, what am I supposed to do here, Dad? Like, eat at the diner every night, steak and potatoes. Like, I'm going to be stuck here like Mom. And so then she drives off, and Charlie's just like, what did I do? What the fuck did I do, you know? So as she's driving away, Edward just, like, climbs into the driver's seat. Apparently he, like, hopped on the car and hops on in. And he's like, you know, you've seen my sick Volvo spins, so, like, let me drive. And then they head off to quote-unquote safety, right? Like, he's trying to take her to a safe place. But Bella's never safe because she loves drama. She just loves the drama too much. And so they're in this quote-unquote safe place, and Alice gets a vision, and it's about the hunter trying to get Bella alone. And so she starts drawing this room, and Bella's like, why are you drawing my ballet studio? And Alice is like, you've been here? And so, like, they're talking about how this is where he's probably going to try to kill her and everything. But, you know, that's all lost on Bella when she gets a call from the hunter, and her mom's voice is on the phone, and she's like, Bella, where are you? Bella, where are you? And so he's like, you need to meet me alone if you don't want me to kill your mommy. And so, being the dumbass teenager that she is, because keep in mind, Bella's a teenager, she's like, I'm gonna go alone. I'm going to go alone to this ballet studio to see a hunter who wants to kill me and is threatening to kill my mom, as if she could do anything about that, right? So, turns out it's just a trick. He doesn't have her mom at all. He stole one of the home movies from Charlie's house, like a creep. And then he's trying to make, like, a creepy video. Hi, Adam! I'm just talking about, like, this creepy hunter vampire in Twilight. We're on the first movie still. This may have to be a 2-part series of me talking about it because I've gone way too in depth on the first movie, but so it turns out the voice that she heard on the phone is not her mom. It's just a recording. And he has her little home video camera, and he's like, let's make a movie. I chose my stage well. And then he, like, throws her into a pillar and breaks her leg with his hand. And then Edward shows up, right? Like, and the vampire bites her, but Edward, like, pulls him off, and he just starts fighting him. And Bella's about to pass out and start turning, and the other vampires all show up, and then they rip off the hunter's head, and they start a fire in the ballet studio to burn him up. Hi, Billie, voice class. Oh, welcome. Hi. I'll see you soon. I'm having fun. I'm, like, totally ranting about Twilight, but it's fine. So as she's starting to, like, pass out from the trauma and, like, the venom, Carlisle's like, you have to make a choice. You can either let her turn or you can suck out the venom. And Edward's like, no, I'm gonna suck out the venom. And Alice is like, I've seen it in a vision. She's gonna turn anyways. Why don't you just leave her? And Edward's like, no, she could always change her mind. So he sucks out the venom, but he almost can't stop sucking her blood and nearly kills her in the process. But, like, he doesn't. So, you know, there's that. And then, like, in the hospital, because obviously she has to go to the hospital, they lie to Charlie saying there was an accident because he can't handle the truth. He can't handle the truth about vampires. And then they leave Edward and Bella alone, which, like, if I was Bella's parent, Edward would never be alone with her again. Just saying. But then they're having this whole conversation. She's like, what the hell? Why wouldn't you let me turn? Alice said she had a vision. Like, instead now I'm, like, this frail human being with a broken leg, you stupid fuck. And he's like, well, because you can always change your mind. Alice's visions are dependent on, like, people's decisions in the moment. And then he forces her to go to prom. Bella doesn't really want to go to prom. She doesn't really give a shit about the institution of high school activities. But Edward feels it's a rite of passage for any teenager. So she and her broken leg get all dressed up, and then they isolate themselves from the rest of the school. Like, oh my god, prom's a rite of passage. But instead of hanging out with everybody at the prom, they're just dancing alone under a gazebo. Completely unaware of the fact that Fergie from the group of the Black Eyed Peas who showed up to the baseball game is now watching them in the distance because they killed her lover. They killed her mate. Then cut to the credits with, like, the musical accompanying styles of, like, Radiohead and Paramore. That's literally the end. The end of the movie is just them dancing under a gazebo as Fergie watches in the distance. And then she runs down the stairs, like, away from them. That's movie one. Nothing really, like, nothing is explained. There's no real solid ending there. But it does lead us into New Moon, right? Leads us into New Moon, movie 2. This is where Jacob comes into play. Any questions? Any questions so far before we get into New Moon? I will be happy to answer any. Yeah, it's crazy, right? It's crazy. But, you know, to tweens, this was crack. This was crack to teenagers in the day because, like, this was around the same time as everybody was watching, like, Hunger Games and Harry Potter, and everybody just wanted to escape reality into, like, these weird fantasy worlds. So, like, it was a whole thing. It was a whole thing for this generation. I'm gonna take another sip of my Sunny D because I'm quickly dehydrating myself from talking. This is gonna be a long stream. Cut to movie 2, right? And the movie starts with Bella having this, like, really weird dream where she's out in the field of lilacs, and then she sees an old lady in the distance, and she's like, Grandma? And then she walks over, and it ends up being a mirror, and then she looks to her side, and Edward's there all young, and she's just, like, super wrinkled. And when she wakes up, she's, like, obsessed with Edward changing her, right? She wants Edward to change her more than anything. She doesn't want to age up past him. She doesn't want to have, like, this weird May-December looking relationship, even though technically it already is because he's old as fuck. But, you know. And he's watching her while she sleeps because he's always watching her while he sleeps because for some reason it fascinates him because he doesn't sleep, but, like, it's weird. It's weird. And the Cullens then throw her an 18th birthday party, right? Like, that's kind of all that's important in that first one. Oh, and also, they watch Romeo and Juliet in the class. Like, they have one class together where she's telling him about the dream, and they're watching Romeo and Juliet in their English class, which is really freaking funny, because if you've watched this movie a few times, you start to realize, like, this whole second movie is basically, like, if Romeo and Juliet didn't kill themselves. So, there's that. Anywho, the Cullen clan decides to throw her an 18th birthday party at their vampire lair because apparently she just is so comfortable there. Not worried about getting eaten at all. And Edward really suddenly realizes how dangerous their relationship is. Because, you know, she gets a paper cut at the birthday party on a card. She literally cuts her finger on a card. And Jasper nearly eats her. And she's like, she's not mad about it at all. She's just like, oh, it happens. Like, it was fine. Everything worked out. But Edward realizes how dangerous this is and breaks up with her and then just abandons her. Right? He's like, I put you in too much danger. I'm just gonna leave. And the whole family leaves town, cutting off all contact. Alice's email is completely just inactive. Bella can't reach any of them. So she goes through this severe depression. And the scene is supposed to be, like, deep and emotional and, like, make you feel something. But these days I cannot watch it without laughing because for, like, 3 months in really slow motion, the scene takes forever, right? It just pans around her sitting in this chair. And it's kind of funny to just picture her sitting there for, like, 3 months straight, like, not moving at all. But Charlie is like actively concerned, right? Like Charlie's like, girl, you can't just sit here up in this room, and if you continue to sit here, I am going to send you back to live with your mother because this is just sad. And she's like, no, I'm totally gonna go hang out with my friends tonight. Like, I'm totally fine. And so she finally goes out of the house to hang out with Jessica, aka Anna Kendrick. But, you know, instead of doing anything that Anna Kendrick wants to do, like, I don't know, shopping or going to the mall or just like anything normal, she decides we're gonna go see a slasher film. Welcome, Starry Skies! But so she takes Jessica to this like super bloody, super gory slasher film. Totally not Jessica's vibe. But she's seeking so much adrenaline that like she can't even think about anything. And so they're leaving the movie and Jessica's like, yeah, like that was totally fun. I don't know why we wouldn't want to go like shopping or something, but like whatever. You wish there was an alt movie where she ends up with Jacob. Right? It would have been so much easier. It would have been so much easier on everybody involved. I wish there was an alt ending where Edward just let her turn in the first movie because we could have avoided all this drama. But, I mean, he ends up with her daughter. I'm getting ahead of myself, but he ends up with her daughter. Alice needed her own movie. Yeah, she's hot and she's great and the nicest person ever. So, like, Bella's on this whole adrenaline kick, and while they're leaving the movie and Jessica's just kind of talking, she just walks off from Jessica to go look at this group of bikers because she remembered that the last time she got approached by a group of giant, scary men, Edward, like, just saved the day. So she's kind of hoping that, like, by putting herself in active danger, she'll somehow see Edward again, which it kind of works because she starts seeing visions of Edward, right? And he keeps telling her, like, go back. Don't do this. This is stupid. This is dangerous. But instead of listening to the vision she sees, she just hops on this random guy's bike. And so he flashes into existence yet again to warn her it's stupid. And while they're riding off, he like pops up right in front of the bicycle, right in front of the motorbike. And Bella freaks out and she's like, stop! Because she thinks he's going to run over Edward and like potentially damage his nice new bike. And the biker's clearly freaked out. He's like, what the hell is wrong with this girl? Like, and honestly, that's a valid tactic. If anybody's approaching you and you're like, this is creepy, this is scary, just act insane. They'll usually leave you alone. So he returns her to Jessica, who's rightfully pissed, right? She's like, you just put yourself in so much danger. You didn't even know those guys. Just because you're an adrenaline junkie, don't put that on me. And she, like, hardly even apologizes to Jessica. I'm pretty sure Jessica gets, like, just a, sorry. That's it. Poor Jessica. Yeah. Jessica is, like, my favorite. She's the most normal. So she realizes that, like, these dangerous situations will get Edward to flash in her head. And so she decides she's not gonna stop by hopping on some rando's bike. She's gonna buy her own shitty, dangerous, broken motorcycles and then bring them to Jacob to help her repair them because she knows Jacob has a little crush on her. And she's like, oh, I bet he'll fix these for free. So completely using Jacob. Jacob is too good for this world. Like, he deserved better. I'm actually kind of glad she didn't get with Jacob because Bella's just kind of stupid. She's just stupid. So he's clearly in love with her and he just wants to help her be normal again. So he agrees to help her fix the bikes. And once they're fixed, hold on, before they get fixed, they have this whole little montage of them working on bikes together, having a fun time, sharing lunches and stuff. And then the bikes are fixed. And the first thing Bella does once her bikes are fixed is break them because she has to go speeding down the road and hoping to see Edward again, right? And she does because Edward's like, stop it. Why are you going so fast? Slow down. But she speeds up. And then she crashes into a rock. Bella should be dead from the head trauma. The blunt force trauma to the noggin, okay? She should be dead several times over. She's constantly falling and injuring herself. But I digress. She crashes. Jacob takes off his shirt to help her stop the bleeding, and she freaks out a little bit, like, no, the blood. And he's like, it's just blood, Bella. Like, why are you so worried? And, like, you know, she doesn't explain that because the last time she got a paper cut, she almost got eaten by a vampire. So, you know, she ends up going on the weirdest not date, right? So, like, Jacob tries to get her to go to the movies, and then she invites that Mike guy from the first movie who is, like, clearly wanting to bang. She gets scared by smelling Bud Slap. Yeah. Yeah, because, like, clearly normal people can't handle just a little blood. But she's a freak. So she takes him on this weird date with Mike, right? And instead of telling either party that it's not a date, she just awkwardly sits between them with her hands in her lap as they're both sitting in the chairs next to her with their hands out, being like, make a choice, Bella. Make a choice. And it, like, Mike ends up getting so grossed out from the slasher film that he runs out to go puke. Bella, who's gonna match my freak? Right? I swear, she doesn't even care about Jacob until he's like, I'm a werewolf. But, so Mike goes and pukes in the toilet because his little weak baby stomach can't handle the slasher film. And her and Jacob are, like, joking about that. And, you know, he's trying to be like, I like you, Bella. And she's like, I'm just not ready for that. And, suddenly Jacob has, like, this weird pain, right? He has, like, this weird pain. He's feeling really weird. And he just leaves. He's like, I gotta go. Takes off. The Mike guy is like, your friend's freaking weird. And she's like, yeah, whatever. But then suddenly Jacob starts ignoring Bella, which, like, I would too. She kind of sucks. But he starts hardcore ignoring her and is like, just stay away. And so the next time we see him, he cuts his hair and he never wears a shirt again. And he has this tattoo. And, like, Bella gets concerned because there's kind of, like, a little cult of his tribe that she knows about, but she doesn't know what's up with them. She even trespasses his house. Yeah, she just shows up. She just shows up at his house to be like, yo, why are you ignoring me? But before she does that, she goes once again into the woods alone, like a dummy, and she runs into, like, I think his name's Laurent. He's, like, the one black vampire in the series, at least in the first few movies. He has, like, these awesome dreads, and he's kind of chill, honestly. He's really chill, all things considered, considering he does eat humans. And he's kind of there to warn her about Victoria, but also be like, you know, I can eat you. I can eat you and put you out of your misery because Victoria will take her time and be really slow about it, whereas I'll just kill you in one go. But then all these giant wolves burst out of the woods and tear him apart. Which I think that was not a fair ending for Laurent. Like, I don't think he really did anything wrong. He was just being his natural vampire self. Like, I don't think he did anything wrong, personally. But the wolves tear him apart and then run off. And Bella goes to Jacob then. Like, after that whole scene, that's when she goes to Jacob. And she's like, why are you avoiding me? Like, I need some sort of answer. And he's like, I can't tell you. It's not my secret to share. And Bella's like, what do you mean? Meh, meh, meh. And because she loves drama, this is when she decides she's going to like Jacob a little bit. Not when he's fixing her bikes, not when he helped his dad fix up the truck to give her for a welcome gift, but when he says he's like, he has this big old secret that he can't share with her. Drama queen. And he's like, the worst part is, you already know. Think back to that story I told you on the beach. And her dumbass can't remember any of it because she was too worried about Edward. Like, the only part she remembers is about Edward. And he's like, of course you don't remember anything. I'm the alpha, I'm the leader, and the one to trust. Pretty much. He does have alpha energy, but he gives up his alphahood to Sam of the Quixote tribe. I think it's Sam Yuli. So, like, you know, Bella is just being Bella and being freaking crazy. Eventually, like, she decides she's gonna go jump off a cliff. I don't know. I think it's because the werewolves were, like, telling her how they ran off Victoria and stuff. But long story short, she decides she's gonna jump off a cliff, hoping to see Edward again because she's like, worst case I die, best case I see Edward. So, when she falls into the water, little does she know, Victoria is just in the water, like about to grab her before Jacob pulls her out and brings her home. And then they have this whole little like powwow, I guess is the, I don't know, it's probably not the right term, but like they have this whole fire and the whole tribe's there, and he's explaining like, you know, usually we don't allow outsiders. You're the first outsider to ever come to these storytellings, but we have to hear the histories. You need to know what you're getting into, this, and that. And, you know, she listens to some of the stories. She finds out they're werewolves. It's really kind of anticlimactic because she doesn't really care. They're not as dangerous as the vampires in her mind, so she doesn't care. She's so addicted to the drama. But meanwhile, Alice had a vision, right? She had a vision of Bella falling off a cliff. Like, or jumping off a cliff, really. And so Edward and Alice think Bella is trying to kill herself, right? So Alice drives all the way out to Forks from wherever they went. And she's like, oh my God, you're alive. I thought you were dead. And she's like, what do you mean? She's like, I saw you jump off a cliff. And she's like, yeah, but Jacob pulled me out of the water. And Alice is like, oh my God. Oh my God. Like, your wolf stink. Your wolf stink is why I couldn't see anything. And, you know, Alice is all, like, anti-wolf. But, like, it makes sense, but also, like, come on. He saved her. Get over it. And so, Edward calls the house, and he's like, I want to talk to Charlie. And Jacob's like, he's planning a funeral, because he's, like, planning a funeral for somebody else, but Jacob doesn't clarify that. So now Edward thinks, like, oh, confirmed Bella killed herself. And he's like, I'm just gonna go try to pull that Romeo and Juliet story that I told you about in the beginning, where, like, they were watching Romeo and Juliet in English class, is kind of a foreshadowing. So he's like, I'm gonna get myself killed. And he goes to the Volturi and is like, can you just kill me? Can you put me out of my misery? But they're like, no, Edward, your skills are too powerful. Like, you could always join us, like, abandon your family and join us, but we're not just gonna kill you and waste your talent. Like, that'd be stupid. So Edward comes up with this plan, and he's like, you know what? On the festival of the day that they celebrate banishing vampires from the city, I'm gonna reveal myself to all the humans. And, Alice sees this in a vision, right? She's like, oh my God, we gotta get to Italy. And basically just kidnaps Bella, who leaves no explanation for Charlie. Poor fucking Charlie, okay? If I had a daughter like this, I would die. Hi, Cheese! Welcome, welcome! So they hop on a flight to Italy. Like, what? First of all, you're vampires and you run super fast. Couldn't you just run her over the water instead of taking a flight and wasting, like, miles and money and, like, whatever? But, you know, I don't know. She calls her dad Charlie. Yeah, how disrespectful. How disrespectful. So they get there just in time, right? Bella is running through this crowd of people. Running through the crowd. And they're all dressed in red, and she's the only one wearing a different color. She's just wearing, like, a green button-down. But Edward slowly, like, at snail's pace, walking into the light, and he starts unbuttoning his shirt. What's happening? I'm explaining New Moon. I'm on the second movie. I already explained the first one. But I'm going into my deep dive of Twilight and how I feel about all the characters. Welcome, lights. So Edward's unbuttoning his shirt, and he's getting ready to show his, like, glitter disco ball skin to all the humans. And Bella gets there just in time to, like, push him back into the darkness. And he's like, I'm in heaven, thinking that the Volturi killed him. By the way, the Volturi is, like, this large clan of vampires who... They kind of set all the rules. They're kind of in charge. And if you break any of the vampire laws, they just decapitate and burn you on the spot. So, you know, he thinks they killed him. And that he's in heaven because he's holding Bella, who he thinks is dead. And she's like, no, you stupid fuck, I'm right here. Put on your shirt. I mean, she doesn't say that, but she might as well. Because, like, Edward's being dumb. Edward's being dumb. And, you know, so then the Volturi's really pissed. They call everybody down to the basement, and they're like, what the hell, bro? Like, you can't just nearly expose yourself to all these humans, exposing our secret. Like, you can't just do that. It would give her more personality, right? Again, Bella just communicates through weird mouth noises, like, that's all she says. Like, you could make a movie out of that. But the Victoria's pissed. Everybody's in the basement. There's, like, this really awkward elevator scene where they're all just, like, standing super tight and, like, stiffly. And they get to the leader, Arrow, who, he's kind of got his, like, weird power where he can read every thought you've ever had with one touch. So, like, he'll hold your hand, and then he knows everything you've ever thought or done, which is crazy. And they kind of want to kill Bella because she's human, and they're like, what the hell? How you told a human, now we're going to have to kill you and her. And he's like, no, Bella figured out her secret on her own. Here, let me show you. And so Arrow reads his thoughts and is like, oh, okay, I don't like this, but we should kill Edward because he's posing too much of a risk to our kind. But then Bella's all like, take me instead. Yeah, they can't read Bella's mind. That's what throws them off. Because he's really startled by this because he always is looking out for new powers and, like, new psychic abilities in the vampires to add to his clan. But when he can't read Bella's thoughts, he's like, can any of your other powers work on her? And so this one vampire who, like, when she looks at you, she can cause you to have the most internal pain ever. And she can't hurt Bella. She tries her power on Edward, and it's super effective. But now at this point, they really want to kill Edward. Like, meh. They're like, Edward, you stupid asshole. Like, you nearly ruined it for everyone. How dare you? And Bella's like, no, take me instead. And her almost sacrifice touches Arrow's soul. He's like, you would die for one of our kind? And she's like, yeah, he would never hurt me. And so they decide, like, if they turn her, that they won't kill anyone. He's like, basically like, well, why haven't you turned her yet if you love her so much and she loves you? And he's like, she's still human, she can change her mind. And Alice is all like, no, she'll be turned soon. I've seen it. I'll do it myself. And then she goes up to Arrow and shows him the vision of, like, Bella turning. And he's like, okay, I accept this on the condition that it happens soon. Okay, like, this needs to happen soon. You can't just let her be human forever. So they all go home, where, you know, there's Carlisle, Esme, Rosalie, Emmett, everybody. And Rosalie's the only one who has any objections to Bella at all. Like, all the rest of them just seem to accept her into the family. But they go home and vote on it anyways. They're like, this is going to affect everyone. So what do you all think? And everybody but Rosalie is like, yeah, sure, why not? I already feel like you're part of the family. But Rosalie is like, I would not choose this for myself. You don't know what you're getting into. You have a whole life ahead of you. You could have kids. You could have a family. You could have a future. And this is what you want? And Bella's like, yeah, it's exactly what I want. All I want is Edward. All I ever think about is Edward. Even though I have a better, hotter option right here, all I think about is Edward. So, you know, they all agree, and they decide that, like, after graduation is when they'll turn her because, you know, they want her to get all of her experiences and whatever. I don't know. But, you know, after all this, she goes home, and Charlie's like, what the fuck? You just left again? You left no. You didn't tell me where you were. I couldn't get a hold of you on your cell phone, and then I find out you went to Italy? For what? For what reason? And so he basically puts her on house arrest, but also allows her to continue dating Edward because he's like, if, like, I don't, I'm just gonna watch you rot in your bedroom for the rest of your life like you did for those 3 months at the beginning of the movie. Like, we can't have that happening again. Like, you're too depressing. It's contagious. So, you know, she's still allowed to see Edward, but she can't leave the house. And, so then eventually she goes to the woods, right? Like, just again, because this girl's always in the woods for whatever reason, and she begs Edward to change her. And then Jacob hears their conversation and gets, like, rip shit, right? He's, like, so mad. And he's like, you gotta keep our treaty in mind. And if you bite a human, if you turn her, our treaty's void. And Bella's like, my body, my choice. It's not up to him. It's not up to the one biting me if he's gonna bite me. I get whatever I want. She just likes touching grass too much. She likes touching grass too much. You know, it's weird to not ever touch grass, but it's also really weird to only ever touch grass. So then, like, they're laying in the middle of the woods because they're always laying on the ground of the woods. Always. Like, they don't care if it's damp, cold, and wet. Like, they're just on the ground in a field all the time. Bugs crawling all over them. And Edward's like, fine, I'll turn you if you marry me. And that's basically where the second movie ends. Like, it doesn't really go through anything. Yeah, just frolicking in the forest. Always! Always! But nothing is really solved here, right? Like, they don't kill Victoria. They save Edward. We have this whole, like, love triangle start with Jacob. Which, fun fact, according to, like, online sources, Jacob was never really meant to be another love interest, but they liked his character so much after the first book and movie that Stephanie Meyer was like, yeah, let's just write him in. Let's just write him in. That's why there's 2 parts of a movie. Technically, there's 5. There's 5 whole movies on this shit, and they all lead into the next one, technically. But unless you're binging them, it, like, doesn't make sense. It's so weird. But, like, it's so funny to me that Jacob was never really, like, considered to be a real character. He was just kind of in the first book for the plot. There's a movie part 1 and part 2. Yeah, that's Breaking Dawn. Breaking Dawn part 1 and 2. We still have Eclipse before that. There's still Eclipse. It's crazy. It's crazy. Do we have any questions before I get into Eclipse? Because I think we can move on to Eclipse now. But, like, if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. Let's see. I don't think we have questions. Okay. If you have questions, just ask them. I'm going to get into the third movie. We're going to move right along because I've been on this for an hour. And I'm only on page 5 out of 10 of my 12-point font paragraph essay. So here's Eclipse, right? And it kind of starts off with the redheaded lady, Victoria, still feeling scorned by the Cullens. She's still like, what the fuck? You killed my lover. How dare you? Like, how dare you kill my man? So she just picks some random teenager and turns him into a vampire and hopes that he can build her an army. Because Alice won't see it coming if it's not Victoria's decisions being made. So she kind of just put this newborn vampire in charge of biting and controlling everybody. And she has little involvement in the actual details. Meanwhile, Bella wants to be turned so badly, right? Like, she wants to be turned so badly. No smart questions from me, meaning you don't have questions yet. That's okay, that's okay. I'm always willing to accept them, so if later you have any, let me know. If you don't, that's fine. Edward really doesn't want to turn Bella. He's like, he already thinks he's damned to hell. He thinks he has no soul whatsoever. And like, I kind of get it because he's a kind of a monster, but, like, also, Edward's just down on himself too much. Like, he's kind of an asshole, he's kind of a gaslighter, he's kind of a narcissist. But I think that just comes with the age. Like, keep in mind, he's, like, 200-something years old. He saw everything. So he's like, you know, I don't want you to be like me, like, you have a soul, you're good, you're gonna be evil if you do this, nah, nah, nah. And they're at this deadlock. And he's like, I want to marry you first. And she's like, but I don't want to marry you if I'm just going to age and you're not. Like, it's going to be crazy when I'm like 60 and you're still 17. And so, you know, it's like this whole back and forth fight. They're constantly disagreeing on it, but they're still so in love because, you know, apparently off screen they must talk about something else. A Christian vampire. Yeah, he really is. He's very old fashioned traditional in that sense. Like, he wants to be married before he does anything with her. He wants to meet her dad before he takes her on dates. He's very old-fashioned, but also kind of an asshole. And so, at this point, Charlie agrees to lift Bella's house arrest on the condition she spends time with normal freaking people. He's like, I really liked seeing you hang out with Jacob. It made you feel good. You really had a good time with Jessica. What happened to all your school friends? You only ever hang out with Edward. That's fucking weird. You are very codependent on him. And, props to Charlie for trying. Props to Charlie for trying. At this point, I think he knows that she's not going to listen, but he tries. He tries so hard to be the best dad ever. And so, suddenly, Alice gets a vision of Victoria and the army, and the Cullens chase Victoria into werewolf territory, where there's a little bit of an altercation, because they're chasing after a bad vampire, and the wolves also want to kill this bad vampire, but the Cullens aren't allowed to step on their land. But I think it's Emmett decides to do it anyways and to try to chase her, and then one of the wolves kind of attacks him, and then they kind of fight, and I don't think anybody ends up dying, but I think one of the wolves ends up injured, and Edward decides, you know what? Bella doesn't need to know about any of this. He's 109. Okay. Still, he's fucking old, and it's weird. But the rest of the wolves chase Victoria all the way to the Canadian border, and so he just tells her, Victoria is not really a threat right now, but doesn't tell her about the altercation, right? He doesn't tell her about, any of the weirdness with the wolves. And Jacob ends up telling her, because he sees them just hanging out talking, and he's like, what, you didn't tell her? You didn't tell her about the incident? And Bella gets all pissed because he never tells her anything, right? He's always keeping secrets. She's like, we're in a relationship. If, you can't just do this to me constantly. You need to let me know for my own safety what's going on in the world around me. I can't just be in the dark all the time. So she just leaves with Jacob. Just leaves with Jacob to go spend time with the tribes. And she meets more of the wolves and, tribe members, including this one girl with, a giant scar on her face. I think her name's Emily. BFF moment. Yeah! They end up, getting really close in this scene, I feel like, because she's learning a lot more about their culture, and because she's pissed at Edward, she's like, fuck it, I'm just gonna get to know Jacob instead. And we find out this one girl, Emily, Emily is, the entire reason when Jacob turned into a vampire, he wanted Bella to stay, or not a vampire, when Jacob turned into a werewolf, he wanted Bella to stay away. It's, Emily has this giant scar on her face from when Sam. From when Sam lashed out at her during a fight, he got, really mad and wolfed out, and then, he scratched her. And now she has this giant disfiguring, scar. Goth Goose, my beloved, I'm Wednesday Adams! Welcome, Phil! But because that happened, and now Sam has to look at her face every day, and he feels incredibly guilty about the whole situation. And all the werewolves can read each other's thoughts, and so he's constantly hearing Sam be like, oh my god, I can't believe I hurt my wife. I can't believe I hurt the love of my life. He was terrified that, he would hurt Bella. That is where Jacob and Edward differ. Jacob was ready to never see Bella again at one point, just because he didn't want to hurt her. Whereas Edward was playing these fucking mind games of oh, I'm dangerous. You shouldn't be my friend. Oh, I never said I don't want to be your friend. It's just that it's dangerous. Jacob was ready to give up. Sometimes you wolf out and feel bad too. It's okay. It happens. It happens. And so Jacob does confess, during this time, that he loves Bella, and he's like, with me it'd be as easy as breathing. Because it would. If they were to get together, she wouldn't have to turn, she wouldn't have to die, she could have a whole litter of his babies, and it would be normal, and it'd be fine. And Bella likes warm things like the sun. Exactly! She said she hates cold, wet things, and so, I don't think she's gonna be really much enjoying Edward's monster- hold on. I almost finished that sentence. I should not finish that sentence. Lurking! That's fun. Litter. Yeah, she could have had a whole litter! Anyways. She insists that she loves Edward, right? Like, this whole time she's spending time with Jacob, but she's like, no, Jacob, I don't care that my life could be completely easy and I could still have all the drama I could ever want. Like, I love Edward. And so he tries to kiss her unconsensually, and so she gets mad and punches him in the face. But because werewolf logic, his jaw is like thick as steel, and she ends up hurting her hand. And then he's all like sorry, and she ends up forgiving him, but like it's really awkward between them now because Jacob crossed that line of just a friend and like being the quote-unquote nice guy who thinks that if he hangs around long enough eventually she'll develop feelings, to being that creep who tried to kiss her that one time, you know? And so, like, the wolves and vampires, brain finished autofill processes for unfinished phrases. Yeah. The wolves and vamps at this point, like, they end up becoming an alliance, right? Because they're like, we have bigger fish to fry. That Victoria bitch, she's still out looking for you. She's still scorned because we did not resolve that in the last movie for some reason. So they form an alliance, and they start training together in the woods. This is when we find out that Jasper used to be a Confederate soldier. This is when we find that out. And suddenly, out of nowhere, he has a Southern accent. I swear before he didn't, but suddenly he does. And the wolves are kind of like uneasy because they hate vampires. They hate them. That their whole purpose in life is to kill vampires. They're very hesitant to team up with them. But while they're in the woods, Jasper's like, you need to be prepared to fight this newborn army. And like he's like, I have experience with newborns. Freaking. And then we find out his whole backstory, right? So Jasper's backstory is that he was a soldier who got turned by a bunch of vampires on the battlefield. And then he met, or no, I'm sorry, he didn't get turned by vampires on the battlefield. He met this, like, crazy-ass bitch who was part of, like, 3 vampires with her, like, her sisters or something. I don't know if they were actually sisters, but it's, like, they're supposed to be, like, sisters. And she ends up turning him, and which makes him fall in love because she's a vampire, and, like, there's part of their whole, like, predatory nature is everything about them pulls you in. That's, like, a direct quote from the first movie when Edward's like, I'm a monster, Bella. Everything about me pulls you in. As if I would even need that. As if you could outrun me. So that's a whole thing. He falls in love with the girl who turns him. And she uses Jasper to create her own newborn army. But this whole time, Jasper freaking hates himself because he has to put down any of the newborns who don't comply. And he's just really uncomfortable with everything, but he doesn't know what to do because he thinks he's in love. Whole thing. But then eventually he meets Alice, who showed him a different way and showed him what it meant to be happy and in love. And so that's a whole thing. But because he had experience with the newborn army, he has a lot more insight than the other vampires would. He also has a lot more insight than the werewolves. Let's see. And then we never hear about the girl who turned him again. I'm pretty sure he killed her, but we don't really hear anything about her again. So they do this whole training scene. Jasper's like, don't let them get their arms around you because they can crush you in a single hug. They'll crush you with their embraces. And like all this other stuff. Like they're 10 times stronger than the normal vampires. They're going to be faster. They're going to be a little bit more keen with heightened senses. And, you know, eventually after that, Edward and Bella get some alone time, right? Like, they have this whole training montage, but then Edward and Bella get some alone time. Where he's like, I'm so afraid that once I turn you, your feelings are gonna change. And, like, you don't know what you're getting into. And she's like, fine, well, like, and then he's like, well, I want you to marry me if I'm gonna change you. Like, you have to marry me. And she's like, I'll marry you if you fuck me. That's literally, like, pretty much exactly what she said. She's like, yeah, I'll marry you if you have, like, sex with me while I'm human. Because she's fucking wild. Like, he tells her, like, you are going to die. Like, this could be potentially lethal. My monster dong is lethal, potentially. You don't know what you're getting into. And she's like, I don't care. I want to love you in every humanly possible way before I love you in every vampiric way. And he's like, it's not safe. It's not safe. Maybe after we get married. And then he proposes. This can't be real. This is exactly how Twilight Eclipse plays out. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. The build-up is respectable, right? Like, commitment. It's commitment to the bit. And so, like, he pulls out this giant ring. Literally, like, I'm trying to find something around here that's the size of the ring. I don't know. It's like 3/4. Like, if you took 3/4 and stacked them on top of each other, that's how big this freaking ring is. And it's his mother's ring, and he's like, please, will you marry me? Because it's not safe to bang until we're married, because, like, he's worried about her soul. His main thing, quote unquote, is her soul. I think that it's just, he's like, if I'm gonna kill you with my monster dong, then I'm gonna be married to you first. You know, like, I would rather kill my wife than my girlfriend type of mentality. His mom is dead. Yeah. I mean, that's to be assumed because, like, you know, if he's 109, his mom has to be, like, at least 125 or so physically to even conceive him. It's like, it's just wild. It's just wild. But he proposes, and Bella's like, okay. Like, she sees that ring, and she's like, absolutely, I will marry you. I didn't realize how rich you were. Clearly, that's, like, her whole mentality there. But then they go back to the Alliance, and, like, they're hanging out with the wolves, and Bella's using her blood to distract the whole army into the desired location. Like, literally, I think she just, like, cuts her hand and then starts touching trees to get her scent everywhere. And that kind of works. So then Jacob, because he has the doggy dog sten, she's got that dog in him. She rides on his back, or he carries her. I think he carries her, like, in his human form, which it would have been so much easier if he just transformed into a wolf and gave her a ride like a pony. Like, it would have been so much easier, but anyways, they take off into the woods. Edward goes with them, and they're supposed to be there for protection, right? Like, they figure that if Bella's away from the scene, it'll be less distractions. The Cullens can take care of the other vampires. Everything will be fine, honky-dory, whatever. But they're on top of a mountain, and it's cold. It's cold. And Jacob overhears them talking about the engagement and gets, like, super pissed because he's like, what the hell? You're gonna kill her. You're gonna kill her. And, like, Edward's like, I don't even want to, but Bella's all, it's my body, my choice again. And, so it's, like, a whole thing, and Jacob goes to leave to go back to the fight because, like, he'd rather die than witness Bella get, like, eaten by vampires. But she's like, no, Jacob, don't go. Kiss me. Which, like, your boyfriend is right there. Your fiancé, correction, your fiancé is right behind you, and you're just gonna tell Jacob, like, no, don't go into battle. Kiss me instead. The fuck? And then they kiss. And Bella returns to Edward, and she's like, I love Jacob, but I love you more. And Edward must enjoy the cucking, because he gives literally no fucks. And he's just like, I know. Like, you're not even going to question her on that? You're not even going to question her on the fact that she just kissed Wolf Boy? You're just going to let it happen? So, like, while this whole shit show's going down on the battlefield, Bella is freezing her ass off in a tent, and Edward's like, I wish I could help warm you, but I'm so cold. And Jacob's like, 140-something degrees over here, baby. And you think the vampire culture rubbed too much on Bella? Yeah! Basically, she's wild. She's wild. Fan service, absolute fan service. But they're in the tent, and it's super cold, and so Jacob's like, you can come cuddle me. I'm all warm over here. And so Bella's like, at first she's like, and then Edward's like, no, do it. And so they're all cuddling under the covers, and Edward is reading Jacob's thoughts because Jacob is having very naughty thoughts because I mean, he's shirtless, cuddling the love of his life. Like, are you sure this isn't Wattpad? This is real. This is real. Yeah. And, like, Edward doesn't know what to do because he's like, if you weren't keeping her alive right now, I would kill you. I would kill you so hard. But he knows it's, like, necessary. So a big old fight breaks out between the army and the Alliance, the newborn army and the wolf and vampire alliance, while everything is happening back on the mountain. And Victoria sees through the plan, right? She sees that Bella's not there. It's a trick. So her and her little minion boyfriend who created the army show up at the camp where Edward's like, bro, she doesn't love you. She's using you. She's using you to command her army. That's all she cares about is her ex-mate that, like, I murdered. And so she's trying to get revenge. She couldn't care less about you. But Victoria's like, no, I love you. And he's just saying that so we can't be together. And, you know, I told you how he reads minds and he's just gaslighting you. Meanwhile, she's gaslighting him. So he kills the little boyfriend, and then Victoria almost kills Edward, right? Like, she is just about to kill Edward when Bella remembers one of the stories, like one of the histories from the Quixote tribe meeting, where this woman sacrificed herself for the last remaining werewolf to attack the vampire and pass on the lineage and stuff. Almost living up to her name, right? And so, like, Bella remembers this whole story, and so she cuts her hand, and Victoria picks up the scent, and she's like, and then, like, as she's distracted running at Bella, Edward gets the chance. He sees his chance, and he strikes, and he decapitates Victoria. And Jacob gets pretty badly hurt because he went back to the battlefield, and, like, he got pretty hurt. So the tribe carries him home. It's, like, a whole thing. Suddenly, after the werewolves leave, right? Like, the werewolves are like, all right, fight's over. We're gonna take Jacob home. He's freaking badly injured. Like, we need somebody to go fix him up. Suddenly, the Volturi shows up. Like, they didn't want to step in beforehand. No. They knew what was happening, and they just wanted to see how it played out. Because, you know, curiosity killed the werewolves, apparently. Bloodthirst goes bad. Exactly. So they show up just in time to be not helpful at all. And they decide to torture this newborn, because, like, one newborn out of the whole thing, she surrendered. She's like, I don't want to be a part of this. They turned me. I'm confused. And she's, like, 16. She's a kid. The Cullens take pity on her, and they were ready to accept her as their own daughter, right? The Volturi was having none of that. So they started torturing her with Pain Girl. I forget who she plays. It's this blonde bitch. Hold on. It is... Of course, I don't have a picture of the Volturi. It's I think this bitch. But you can't really see her. Anywho, the one who, whenever she looks at you, causes pain, she starts torturing the little girl. Like, just staring her down. Not letting her answer any of the questions they're trying to get answers to. You always say curiosity killed the cat, but you're no cat. And adapt it to the movie. Exactly, curiosity killed the wolf boy. So the Cullens are like, no, you know, we'll take full responsibility for her. We will train her. We'll keep her, like, good. Like, don't kill her. But the Volturi's like, fuck that. We're gonna kill her to make a point. Like, who would we be to let this rebel live? And so the Cullens can't do anything because it's the Volturi. Like, the Volturi will kill them if they do anything. They're clearly outnumbered. So then they kill her. The Cullens are all sad. And then they notice that Bella has returned to the battlefield, and they're like, excuse me, we had a deal. Like, why isn't she turned yet? And the Cullens are all like, don't worry, the date's set. It's set. Like, it's all, we have a plan. And they're like, okay, but it better be soon. And then Bella goes to visit Jacob, where, like, you hear screaming. And then Dr. Cullen walks out of the house, and he's like, I had to break and reset his bones, and I've done everything I can, but we just have to wait. because I don't know what the fuck happened to Jacob. I think he got squeezed by one of the newborns and like half of his ribs broke or something. But Dr. Cullen is like apparently the best doctor ever, and blood doesn't seem to bother him one bit. So, you know, he mends Jacob up, and Bella tells Jacob she's in love with Edward, and Jacob reluctantly is like, fine, whatever. He heals very quickly. Yeah, he heals very quickly, but like, he's still really badly injured. And so, like, Jacob reluctantly is like, fine, whatever, do what you want. I know you don't love me, and, like, hopefully things don't change between us, and whatever, you know? Like, that's kind of resolved. Like, Jacob at this point knows that she doesn't love him. So then, again, Edward and Bella go lay on the cold, wet ground, and he's like, why would you want to be like me? Why would you want this? How dare you? Like, what do you want? And she's like, I feel more alive and more like myself in your world, which is ironic because he's dead. Like, his heart's not beating. He is cold as ice. And so after that, they go and tell Charlie, or like they're talking about telling Charlie about their engagement, and Bella's like, it's a good thing you're bulletproof, because Charlie would absolutely shoot down this man. He would absolutely shoot down this man if he could, if he had the chance. If I were Charlie, and I was a cop, and I thought I could get away with it like Charlie could, I would absolutely kill Edward. Fuck Edward. I hate Edward. I want to like him. I want to like him because I like Robert Pattinson. I think he's a great actor. But, like, Edward. Mortal zoned. He's not even living. Exactly! And so, like, that's pretty much the end of this one, is they're just, like, laying in the grass, and they go to tell Charlie about their engagement. And, like, that's it. The movies, like, always end up with them laying in the grass. I'm Team Charlie. I'm not Team Jacob. I think that it would have been convenient for her to end up with Jacob, but I think that she should have listened to Charlie and found herself some normal fucking friends instead of all these monsters. Charlie's the dad. Charlie's the dad. So then we enter Breaking Dawn Part 1. Do we have any questions? Movie 4. I just kind of sped through the last 2 movies, but that poor cop just wants what's best for his daughter. Exactly. Oh my gosh. The first time I watched Twilight with my husband, we were watching with subtitles, and one of the screens was just Charlie standing in a doorway, and the subtitle was Charlie Sighs, and my husband was just like, why could that sum up this entire movie? Why is Charlie Sighs the perfect caption for this entire movie series? And it's accurate! It's accurate as hell. So then we enter Breaking Dawn. Breaking Dawn, I think this is where the movie, like, really gets interesting between Breaking Dawn 1 and 2, like, I don't know. I think this is where it gets interesting, because at this point you have to accept, even no matter how hard Team Jacob you are, you have to accept that she is going to be with Edward, like, against everybody's will. Charlie's the only real character in the movie. Kind of. I would say Jessica is also really real. Like, I love Jessica. Okay, she's like a bad bee. You feel bad for Mr. Goose, but loves that he was paid. He loves Twilight! I got him to watch it once, and he loves Twilight. You're breaking down from the movie part. Yeah, Breaking Dawn breaks me down every time. So, Breaking Dawn takes place several months later, right? And at this point, Jacob's healed. But the first scene we see is him bursting through his door. Just shifting in anger, wolfing out in anger. And this piece of paper drops slowly to the ground, like effortlessly. And his dad, Billy Black, the guy in the wheelchair with the long hair and the cowboy hat, picks up the note, revealing that it's the Cullen wedding invitation, right? Like, at this point, they're getting married. There's nothing no one can do about it. They're getting married. We have to accept it and cry later. So Bella's trying on shoes that Alice picked, because Alice planned everything, because Bella doesn't really care about marriage. She just wants to, like, fuck her man and get turned into a vampire. Like, that's all her priorities, okay? She knows her priorities. I can say one thing about Bella. She knows her priorities. They're not exactly good priorities, but she knows what she wants. she couldn't care less about wedding colors or invite lists or anything like that. So she's stumbling in these shoes because she doesn't even practice, but, like, you know. Besides the point. We see, like, the vampires lifting up the, pews. I couldn't think of the word. But, like, picking up the pews, putting them back where they go. And then Bella goes home, and she's packing up things, and she's looking at the dream catcher that Jacob made her, because she still has that on her bed. Jacob made her a dream catcher in, like, the second movie. We're in movie 4, and she still has that dream catcher on her bed. Oh, which I totally forgot! In the second movie, when Bella's all depressed, part of the reason Charlie's so goddamn concerned is because every single night in the middle of the night, she would just start screaming. Just in her sleep, screaming. And he would have to run in there and be like, Bella, you're sleeping. It's fine. Everything's okay. Because she was just having, like, terrible nightmares. So Jacob, being the, like, thoughtful, classy gent that he is, made her a dream catcher to catch all the bad dreams. And she still has it! Okay, anyways. So she's looking at that, and Edward appears, because he always appears in her bedroom, because he hops through the window like a fucking freak. Oh yeah, she was having lots of night terrors. Yeah, I totally forgot about that part. And he tells her about all the people he's killed. Like, he just pops in her room to tell her about all the people he's killed in a final attempt to change her mind. But he kind of, like, explains the story wrong if he was trying to do that, because he explains that he was basically just Dexter, where he really only murdered murderers and bad guys. So she's like, oh, if you only killed bad guys, like, you can't be that bad. Like, oh my god, like, you're kind of a vigilante. Like, oh my god, you're Batman. So she just completely disregards that. She's like, no, Edward, you're not a terrible person for murdering people. Okay. So then Edward's brothers show up, Emmett and Jasper. They just, like, pop up out in the back, and they're like, oh, we gotta take him to his bachelor party, which, of course, doesn't have strippers because they're not fucking normal. They have to go hunt mountain lions and bears. Like, that is their fun, sexy pastime, is hunting mountain lions and bears. What a bachelor party. But whatever. I mean, like, I guess in one way, Edward's, like, a gent, is he didn't want strippers at his bachelor party. That's fine. I think it would have been funny as hell to have a stripper dressed up as a bear and a mountain lion, and then they hunted that. Like, whatever. What do I know? So, she has a nightmare that night about murdering her whole family at the wedding. Like, the wedding's all beautiful, it's nice, everybody's there, and then suddenly she's standing on a pile of their corpses covered in blood. And, you know, it's safe to say she's getting cold feet, right? Like, clearly getting cold feet. Bear dance, yeah. And so she's all nervous, but the Cullen sisters are tirelessly working to give her her perfect day. Bella's parents meet up with her and give her a silver hair clip that belonged to her grandmother. Literal cold feet, yeah. Literal cold feet coming in. And then, like, the second she's walking down the aisle, like, you can tell, like, she's all tense, and she's, like, got that weird, awkward Bella face that she always has. And then she sees Edward, and her face shifts to the other awkward face Bella always has, where it's, like, oddly horny. I don't know why she's so goddamn horny all the time, but, like, you know, whatever. And then all her cares melt away. Her body relaxes. She's fine. And they get married, whatever, it's a ceremony. Nobody really cares about that part. But at the reception, where everybody cares about the reception, give us a Bella face, Billy. A sad one, not the other one. Okay. This is my Bella face. She's just always like, and that's it. But yeah, so then we go to the reception, cut to the reception. The wedding went off without her murdering her family. Like, I think that's a success. That's all anybody could ever ask for, was that nobody got eaten. We're at the reception, and she steps out from the party because she always stepped out from the party. And Jacob's there. And she's super happy because she's like, oh my god, you came to my wedding. I love you so much. But, like, not like that. Like, I love you like a brother. Oh my god. And for some god-forsaken reason, like, You could not pry this out of me if you were my ex. I would not tell you that, like, I fully plan to bang my new vampire husband as a human. Okay? She's like, for some reason, she decides, like, yeah, we're gonna do it while I'm human. Uncalled for. Why put Jacob through that trauma? Okay? Why? Why? And so he gets really mad, rightfully so, because that monster dong is potentially lethal, and the other wolves stop him before he can get too heated, because, you know, Bella's the Cullen's problems now, quote unquote, and, like, she can do whatever she wants. Again, her body, her choice. We don't give a fuck anymore. If she wants to be stupid, let her be stupid. Cue the ridiculously long, cringy sex scene of the newlyweds. They break everything. The scene takes way too long. If you're watching it with anybody other than a partner, it's, like, extra awkward. Like, I remember one of the first times I saw Twilight ever, I watched it with my mom, and it was so cringy. So awkward. Don't watch with your parents. So, this is crazy, right? And she wakes up all happy. She's smiling. She, like, struts into the bathroom. And then she sees all her bruises, right? Because, again, like, it took Edward everything not to crush her like a bug with his monster dong. So Edward's, like, really upset. And he's like, you know, I'm so upset. I didn't mean to hurt you. I hate myself for what I did to you. And she's like, was the sex really that bad? Because, like, her freaking... she thinks everything's about her. Everything has to be about Bella and how she's a fuck up. Like, it can never just be, like, Edward's problem, right? Like, she has to assume everything revolves around her. And she has to be there because they can't function without her. Basically, yeah. She was banged up in multiple senses. But yet she's like, oh my god, I was bad in bed. And he's like, no, I had a great time. You think I didn't enjoy banging my wife? No, I loved it. I just can't stand that I caused you to get bruised and that I could have killed you. So, you know, it's just like an awkward time. And so for the next week, like, for a whole nother week, they're just hanging out playing chess because Edward's like, I don't want to touch you again until you're turned because, like, I'm gonna kill you unintentionally, and I don't want to do that. Like, I just married you. I don't want to lose you so soon because of my monster dong. And Bella keeps trying to seduce Edward, right? Like, she shows up naked. She's, like, popping some cleave. She's trying everything. She's trying everything. And Edward's like, no. But she gets hornier and hornier until she has a wet dream that's so realistic, she wakes up crying. She's like, oh my god, Edward, I had a dream that I just wanted it to be so real. I'm so horny, touch me. And he finally gives in, and they bang again. Meanwhile, Jacob's back home. He's pissed. He's afraid Edward's gonna kill her because monster dong. And now he's plotting how he's gonna murder Edward when he returns. Because he's like, clearly Edward's gonna return without Bella because she's gonna be dead. And then, you know, Bella, cut back to Bella, looking at her unopened tampon box. And, like, you know, this is relatable because I feel like every teenage girl who, like, does the deed at some point thinks, oh my god, I'm gonna be pregnant. Even if you're not, even if it's, like, physically impossible at the time, they're like, oh my god, I'm pregnant. So, you know, she looks in the mirror and she's, like, feeling her belly, like, oh my god, like, am I pregnant? And then she feels something kick her. Which, like, how... I get that it's a vampire baby, but, like, what is the gestation rate? Okay? Like, it's only been a day. And suddenly you feel something moving inside you? Like, did something break off of that monster dong? I don't fucking know. So she's miraculously pregnant from the icy cold seed. And Edward's, like, freaking out. He's like, oh my god, we gotta get home. And so he's vampire speeding around the whole room, packing things up. I think it's a xenomorph. Monster dong. I'm sorry, I keep referring to it. I wrote that in my notes a couple times and now I can't get over it. Because I wrote these notes. I spent hours accumulating my notes for what it's worth. I hope it's worth it. So he's packing all her shit, and he's trying to get her to Carlisle to give her an unconsensual abortion. And he's begging, and she's like, Rosalie, I know all you ever wanted from me. You were talking about how, like, why would I want this? I could have kids. Well, now I can have a kid. Are you really gonna let him take it away from me? So, you know, Carlisle's like, you know, I really can't do anything unless Bella wants me to. She's gonna hate me forever. Like, this has to be her decision. If she starts dying, we'll do what we have to do. But for right now, just let it fucking be a parasite. And everybody but Rosalie wants her to destroy the demon inside her. Which, like, rightfully so. Because, like, it's awkward. You know, this would be something else if it was a comedy. Good point. You need to see Vampire Suck. I don't know if Vampire Suck goes all the way to Breaking Dawn, but Vampire Sucks was hilarious. So, you know, a couple weeks later, Bella's still pregnant. She's refusing to let anybody help her. She's like, I love my baby demon. And Jacob shows up. He shows up at the doorstep being like, where the fuck is Bella? What did he do to her? What did he do to her? And then they open the door, like, in the vampires part, like, the Red Seas, and Jacob walks into the room, and he sees a very pregnant Bella. Very pregnant, okay? Like, it's only been a couple weeks, and she is, like, month 8 of her pregnancy, okay? Super frail as well. Like, she looks like Gaunt. They did a really good job with her makeup here, I gotta say. Really good job. And Jacob's like, hold on. And then, like, because Jacob and the other wolves all share a collective pack brain and they can only think as, like, a group instead of individuals, they all hear his thoughts. Monster dong provides monster gestation. Exactly. So all the other wolves hear his thoughts, and, like, the pack leader is like, we've got to kill Bella and that parasite before it can hurt anyone. And Jacob's like, fuck that. I'm not letting you kill the love of my life. And that's when he decides he's going to assert his alpha dominance over the pack, right? Like, they both wolf out, the pack leader and Jacob. And Jacob just, like, and, like, stands over the other dog and is like, I'm Top Dog. I am Jacob Black of the Black family. And, like, I am the alpha and I stepped down for you, but I will not step down anymore. And so then he leaves the pack, and he's like, I'm gonna go protect Bella, because I love her so much, even though she's pregnant with my enemy's baby. Like, okay, whatever. And, you know, he gets to the outside the Cullen's house, where he's doing little laps to, like, keep an eye out. And then this little runt of the litter, Seth, just shows up, okay? He's, like, 15, and he's literally a child. He's one of the youngest of the wolves to ever wolf out, and he just wants to help. He thinks he's a grown-up now. Whatever. And then his sister shows up, and she's like, I'm not letting Seth just hang out here with you for nothing. We left the pack. We can't hear their thoughts anymore. This is all your fault. But I'm here to protect my brother, so if that means I have to protect your stupid bitch crush, I will too. So that's a whole thing. And she also just kind of wants to get away from Sam, because Leah is actually Sam's ex-girlfriend, because Leah loves Sam and Sam loved Leah, but then Sam imprinted on Emily, the one who he gave a giant scar on her face. Which, hold on. Here we go. So, Jacob is in the woods protecting people, right? He's Billy's son. As you can see, hold on, there we go. You can see my little chart up here. He is Billy's son, but he's also pack tied to Billy and Seth and Sam and Leah. Who Leah and Seth share a blood tie because they're siblings, but Leah used to date Sam, right? And then he imprinted on Emily, Scarface. And so he had to break up with Leah. But because they're all werewolves, they can constantly hear the drama of, like, oh my god, he doesn't love me. Oh my god, he loves that other bitch. Oh my god, what did I do to that girl? That's, like, a whole thing. Your alpha instinct made me choose Emily. Exactly. So it's all this drama. It's all this drama. And she's like, you know, I don't want to be around him and his stupid bitch girlfriend anymore. Like, I just want to be my own wolf. I'll help you protect Bella if it means I don't have to go back there and be that embarrassing girl who's just the alpha's ex. Hearing drama by Bluetooth. It basically is like a Bluetooth connection to the pack. Like, crazy. So that whole thing happens. The Runt and his sister come and help. And the Cullens are starving at this point because it's almost like a nucleus. Like, and the nucleus is the Cullens, and then the outer part of the atom, or like whatever cell, is Jacob, and then the shell is the other wolves. I don't know if that made sense. You know how much effort I put in. I tried so hard, so thank you. Thank you. But there's wolves surrounding the place, and they're like, how are we supposed to get out and hunt? Like, we can't. The wolves are waiting for that moment to strike. And so Bella's body is rejecting normal food. Jacob he makes a bloody good joke, if you will. It's a bloody good joke. He's like, maybe it just wants blood. And Edward is like, oh my god, wait a minute, maybe that'll work. And so they go and they get a styrofoam cup with a straw and a lid, fill it with like a bag of, I think, O negative blood or whatever, because he had it prepared just in case Bella needed it. Like, I think Dr. Carlisle was saving himself a little snack. I don't think it was for Bella, but, you know, they do. British bloody hell, Bella survivors. Exactly. So she starts drinking the cup, right? And then she's like, it tastes. And then all the vampires look at her, and she goes, it tastes good. And then all the vampires are like, hell yeah, Bella's one of us now. But except for Jacob, because Jacob's also in the room, and he's like, ugh. Like, this is nasty. And then he leaves the room, and the vampires chuckle. So meanwhile, this whole time, Edward freaking hates the baby, right? Like, he hates the baby. He's like, it's killing my wife, it's just a parasite, like, I don't want nothing to do with this shit. But then he's next to Bella, and he has his hand on her stomach, and he can hear the baby's thoughts, and he hears that it has goodness in its heart, and it loves its parents. And now suddenly Edward loves it and wants to protect at all costs. Like, sir, you just wanted to hit that belly with a hammer. Like, do not fucking pretend you love this child all of a sudden. Like, nobody's thoughts change that quickly, okay? Fucking... So he loves it. He's like, I'm gonna protect you. The baby's great. And so then Edward and, like, everybody else comes up with a plan, right? They don't even need it. Pretty much. I don't know. And so Jacob is like, okay, I'm gonna come up with this plan to, like, deliver a fake agreement and treaty to the tribe. We're gonna meet in the middle of the woods on this side. Half of the Cullens, you go out and hunt. Like, you just leave, you go hunt. And so that's a whole thing. They escape narrowly because, like, some of the wolves catch on and they go and they chase after the Cullens, but the Cullens get out of the way just fast enough to go hunt. So right now it's just like Bella, Edward, Rosalie, and Jacob. It's just like the four of them in the house. Like, everybody else is gone hunting. And Bella's like, Edward, I picked terrible names for the baby. And, you know, because, like, bear in mind, we don't know what the fuck this child is. It could live for 2 years. It could live for 10 billion. Like, we don't know. This child could live forever with these terrible names. The first one being Edward Jacob. You were about to name your baby not only after your husband, but after the man you kissed in front of him? Excuse me? Bella, you fucking gross bitch. To be fair, sometimes a single detail can completely change one's view of something. That's true. And then, so, that was if it was a boy. If it was a boy, it was going to be Edward Jacob, or EJ. And then she's like, and if it's a girl, Renesmee. Which is a combination of the mother's names, yes, but, like, Renesmee. Renesmee? What name is that? It's terrible! Renesmee. It sounds like a disease. So, as soon as she tells Edward the baby names, her placenta drops and the baby starts breaking bones inside of her baby trying to get out because it's essentially a freaking alligator trying to get out. I don't know. And it breaks a couple of her bones trying to escape the room. So Rosalie and Edward take her into Carlisle's at-home doctor's office where he just has a doctor bed because apparently they have the money for everything they could ever want. Sounds like it should be followed by Descartes. Yeah. But, so they take her to this little baby birthing room, and Rosalie goes to cut open her tummy and, can't handle the blood. She's like, Edward, the blood, I can't, and then leaves. And so Edward manages, because he's like, I've sucked her blood before, I can handle it. He manages to remove the baby, and then he's like, it's Renesmee, it's a girl. And then suddenly Bella's heart stops beating. Okay? She just stops. She's pretty much dead now. But not dead. Because Edward sees this and starts just biting Bella all over. Arms, legs, neck. Who knows where else. But he bites her all over, desperately trying to inject the venom. Before, performing CPR in hopes that, he can get her heart to beat the blood throughout her body a little bit. And he's like, it's not working! It's not working! Because he expected it to be instantaneous, even though he's witnessed multiple people get changed before, and especially because she was pretty much dead. He should have had a little more hope, right? Just a little more hope. He's, completely lost hope. And he's like, if she's dead, I'm gonna hate that baby. Jacob's distraught, okay? Jacob finds out Bella's, heart stopped, and he's distraught. He bursts out of the house in wolf mode and just starts howling. And the pack hear him, and now they want to move in on the Cullens because, Bella's dead. There's nothing to protect her anymore. One has to ask why she didn't get turned earlier. Because Edward's an asshole. That's why. She was literally bitten before, but he sucked the venom out in case she changed her mind. Edward, you should know by now, this bitch is crazy. She's not going to change her mind. If you were able to be alive for all of eternity and you were a doctor and wasn't rich after 100 years, you'd be disappointed. That's fair. That's fair. And it's all probably just a storyline to get her pregnant. But, so Jacob thinks Bella's dead. The whole pack thinks Bella's dead. And so Jacob decides, I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna kill that baby. But Rosalie turns around. Right? She just turns around with this little CGI animated face baby. It is so creepy. You gotta look up Renesmee baby. It's crazy. But she turns around and Jacob just falls to his knees. Because this grown man, who has been in love with her mother for the entire series, imprints on the baby. How... Sir, you just wanted to kill that thing. Again, apparently this baby is just as much of, a babe magnet as its mother. Because if you remember right, in the first movie, all of a sudden when Bella showed up at school, everybody was swarming her because she's so quote-unquote charming. She sees her life flash between his eyes. Exactly. Everything allegedly starts making sense. The stars aligned. Everything you've ever done is for her. It's this whole creepy thing, but, not sexual. It's not sexual. The whole thing with imprinting is, it can be... You be her friend, you be her brother, you be whatever she needs at the time. But, eventually the final goal is to, be with her forever. And it's kind of groomy. Kind of creepy. Just saying, I wouldn't lurk on somebody forever to, date them later. That's just weird. But the wolves start fighting, right? The whole pack comes in, and they start fighting the Cullens. At least the stay-at-home ones, the ones who didn't leave to go hunt. But, of course, just in the nick of time, all the other Cullens start, arriving, and the situation escalates. But then suddenly, Jacob jumps out of the house, right? He's like, no! You can't kill a baby! You can't kill anyone. I've imprinted on it. And it's against their code to kill anybody who's been imprinted on by a pack member. So, like, they kind of are now forced into a permanent truce, if that makes sense. Like, they don't really have a choice. It's against their code. It's against their religion to, like, kill anything that's been imprinted on. Even if it's a baby and they should be like, Jacob, that's fucking weird, you fucking weirdo. Like, go imprint on someone your own age. But whatever. And so the movie ends with all the vampires standing over Bella's decaying body for days. As well, it's not really decaying. It's actually doing the opposite of decaying. Like, her bones are just magically, like, snapping back into place, and, like, her veins and everything are just magically reconnecting. Whatever. And so, like, it's pretty quickly. It's only the course of, like, 3 days that her whole body just, like, magically goes back together. And the movie ends with her eyes just going wide open. And they're red. Cut to credits. So, clearly there is some more drama in the next movie, right? Like, just a little bit. Because now we know that she's not dead. The baby's safe. Jacob's kind of a freak. Not entirely, but, like, kind of. And we have, where is this going? I mean, they're now married, so obviously we're gonna get another, like, another sex scene, because of course we have to. But enter Breaking Dawn Part 2. Right? And this movie picks up right where the last one ended. It literally starts with Bella's eyes, like, opening, right? With her creepy red eyes. Something tells me Bella's gonna get worse, honestly. She kind of gets better, honestly. She has way more personality as a vampire than she ever did as a teenager. So her eyes open, and all of her senses are heightened as she takes a few minutes to, like, enjoy her new body. Because, like, she's a little bit thinner, she's a little bit stronger, she's a little bit more put together, she's not frail like she was when she was pregnant. So she's, like, admiring herself in the mirror, takes a little bit of time with her husband, and she's like, I want to see my baby. Where's Renesmee? And Edward's like, no, babe, we have to hunt first. Like, you need to get some food in your system. You've been asleep for 3 days. Like, come on, babe. And so he takes her out to hunt. And she has, like, super, super heightened senses. Even more than Edward. Because she's a newborn. And as we learned in the previous movies, newborns are just, like, 10 times cooler, right? So she takes her out to hunt. And Bella catches the scent of the blood of a mountain climber. Like, there's somebody climbing the mountains, and he just nicks his arm a little bit, and she's like, oh, snack. So she runs all the way over to the mountain climber, and her first instinct is to kill him, but then Edward's like, Bella, no. And so, like, that snaps her out of it somehow. Like, I don't know, like, all these other vampires struggled tenfold, but she can just be like, no, it's fine. I'm just gonna go find something else. So she takes off, and she's, like, creeping on this deer. And Edward's, like, hella impressed, okay? He's super impressed that she didn't kill him. And he's like, that's my girl. And so instead of killing the deer that's right in front of her, a mountain lion comes to attack the deer. So she jumps the mountain lion. And, like, honestly, the CGI in this isn't that great, but it's also pretty good. Like, it's believable enough. If that makes sense. It's not, like, 100% realistic, amazing, but, like, it's believable enough. The newborns are feral, exactly. So she kills the mountain lion and eats it. And that's pretty much that scene. So then they return home, and they're greeted by Jacob. Because, you know, who else would just be their warm return home welcome guy other than Jacob? But he's, like, super surprised because he's like, wow, Bella, you look mostly the same except for your creepy eyes. And she's like, wow, Jacob, everybody's right. You do sure smell like shit. And so he's out there to make sure that Bella can be around human blood before introducing her to the baby, you know, because he imprinted on it and he wants to keep it safe. And so they go inside after she doesn't kill Jacob, and Bella meets her baby. And, like, it's super creepy looking because of all the CGI. That is the one CGI that's, like, really creepy in this movie and, like, kind of bad is the baby face. Again, Google it. So the infant touches her face, and like she gets to see all of the infant's first memories. One of which being Jacob imprinting on the baby. So the next scene is Bella throwing Jacob out of the house like a literal dog, just out on the lawn, before screaming, "You imprinted on my daughter!" And he's like, it's not what you think it means. It's not what you think. Let me explain. And Nessie, and so, before he can get any further, Bella's like, Nessie? I barely held my child, and you've already nicknamed her after the Loch Ness Monster? Which, like, I mean, Nessie's kind of a cute nickname, what can I say? But yes, he nicknamed her after the Loch Ness Monster. She gets more pretty, yeah. She absolutely gets more pretty. It's funny, I think she almost has more color in her veins when she's a vampire. But, like, the whole time she's, like, yelling and screaming and fighting him, the vampires are all so impressed, right? Like, they're so impressed. They're like, oh my god, what willpower. She hasn't killed him. Like, if any other newborn would be, like, ripping his throat out right now. Oh my god, Bella, you impressive little bitch. So, like, at this point, she's, like, really, really mad at Jacob, and she's about to attack him, not necessarily to kill him, but to, like, beat the shit out of him. And then little runty Seth, that little boy we talked about who wolfed out, he just jumps in the way, and she body checks him into a tree. And then so he just slowly gets up, and he's like, oh, oh. And she's like, oh my god, Seth, I'm so sorry. So that kind of, like, snaps her back into reality, like, of, like, maybe I shouldn't just start attacking these wolves because I'm gonna hurt somebody, I'm a monster. So Alice decides, like, you know what, Bella, like, let's get away for a little bit, okay? Let's go to this cottage where, like, the family and you can live in peace. Like, it can be a cottage just for you, Edward and the baby, your place. And so that's cute, right? It's all cute. And then her and Edward are hanging out there. They start banging, and then they start joking about the banging. They're like, how do you know when to stop? Like, we never get tired. Like, girl, you get bored, I would assume. And so Edward's like, you know, Rosalie and Emmett did it for a whole decade before anybody could be within, like, 5 miles of them. Which, like, 10 years is a long time, okay? That's a long time. I don't think they were doing that the whole time. They were probably also going for, like, long walks on the beach and stuff. I would like to imagine that that's not their whole purpose for the first 10 years. But, you know, what do I know? So, you know, and it's Bella's superpower is super restraint, apparently. So I would hope she can control her urges just a little bit. Just a little bit. And eat, too. Yeah, I would hope they'd eat, too. And travel. So, you know, that whole thing happens. And the Cullens, like, he returns home with Bella after just, like, I think a couple days, which, like, everybody's surprised that they're already done. They're probably like, oh my god, Bella must be bad in bed. So they're at the Cullens, right? And they're talking about, how are we gonna fake Bella's death? As if we hadn't put Charlie through enough. In order to prevent him from discovering our secret, we gotta fake her death. She's the rising shield hero. Yes, yes. So Jacob hears this, and he's like, what the fuck? I've watched Charlie mourn you so many times. He thought you were dead when you were pregnant. He thought you were dead when you took off to Italy. He thought you were dead the first time you disappeared and you got your leg broken by that stupid hunter vampire. Like, poor Charlie. Okay, poor Charlie. And so Jacob's like, I'm gonna go tell him, but I'm not gonna tell him, but I'm gonna kind of tell him. So she died after birth. Technically, yeah. Yeah. But they can't say that she had a baby, because if they're like, oh, Charlie, not Isabella, Bella had a baby, he would want to be there immediately, you know? And they don't know what the fuck this thing is. Nobody really knows at this point. So Jacob runs over to Charlie's house, and they're just, like, hanging out in the woods outside the house, and he's like, Charlie, I've got to tell you something. It's about Bella. And Charlie's face drops, and he gets, like, so sad. And then we have one weird yet funny scene with Jacob and Charlie. Exactly. So he's like, I gotta tell you something. I've been keeping a secret from you, and it's gonna be better if you see it. So he starts taking off his shirt and his pants, and Charlie's like, whoa, do you have to take your shirt off for this? Like, what's going on, bud? And then he shifts into a werewolf, and Charlie's like, oh! And, like, falls back on his ass, because I think anybody would, and it's fucking terrifying. A giant wolf just pops out of nowhere, out of this kid you've known his entire life. And so he explains that, like, I'm a wolf, but Bella's not. I just needed you to believe that there are things out there beyond what the human knowledge is, right? He could have just turned, but the contract forbids. Basically, and the belt buckle. Yeah, it was so awkward. He's like, Charlie, you need to know, like, there's more supernatural things out there than what you've ever known, and I can't tell you what happened to Bella, but you need to know she's different, and that's all I can tell you. And if you wanna know her, if you wanna see her again, you have to accept that. And so, he comes back to the Cullen's house, not Charlie, but Jacob first. And he's like, I told Charlie what I am. Like, Charlie needs to see his daughter again. We can't let him think that she's dead. And he's gonna be here in a few minutes. So the rest of the vampires are like, well, this is what we're doing now. I mean, we're really fucking pissed at Jacob, but technically he didn't do anything wrong. Technically he didn't say what he was. He didn't say what we are. So, like, technicalities. And so they're like, Bella, you need to act like a human. You have to act like such a normal human. Like, this is how you breathe. Remember to blink 3 times a minute. Try to move slowly. Can you sit down without making a hole in the wall? And then they give her contacts, too. And so Charlie shows up, and he's, like, asking all these questions, but Bella's like, I can't tell you. If you want more answers, we're gonna have to leave again, like... And Charlie's just the best dad, okay? Because instead of saying... No, I want the fucking answers. Like, you're gonna tell me right now. He's just like, if I can't know because you'll leave again, then I don't want to know. Like, whatever's fine. Just don't leave me again. I can't go through that again. Which, like, how sweet. How sweet that Charlie cares more about seeing his daughter than knowing what the fuck is going on, right? What's going on, sweetie? Yeah. And he's like, you look the same, but you look different, but you look good, but you're like, and he notices she's cold, but like, he can't ask anything. So then they introduce Charlie to their quote unquote adopted daughter, because this child is way too old to have just come out of her vajayjay. And like, nobody wants to explain that. So they're like, yeah, this is our niece who we adopted. But Charlie's no fool, okay? Charlie's no fool, and he's like, she's got your eyes, Bella. It's like Bella and them just like kind of give a knowing glance of like, so everybody congratulates Bella once he leaves for her resolve in not eating her father, because they're like, oh my god, Bella, you're so restrained. You have so much self-control. Oh my god. Perfect voice impression. Thank you. So Emmett is just like, well, she's still not the strongest one of us. She might have that newborn strength, but I'm stronger. So Bella and the whole family, including Emmett, go off into the middle of the woods, and where they arm wrestle, because, you know, what else are they going to do with their free time and their strength? And, like, they're going back and forth for a second, but then Bella slams his hand down on the rock so hard that the whole boulder just breaks, right out from under them. And then they all laugh, and she starts breaking rocks even more. Yes, and Bella beats him, absolutely. But not without smashing that rock and all the other rocks around her, just kicking them and having a grand old time. So everybody's like, how do you feel, Bella? How do you feel now that you're one of us? Are you happy with your change? And she's like, oh my god, I feel more alive than I've ever felt. I was born to be a vampire. Bella doesn't talk like that, but, like, in my head, that's how her brain thinks. Like, okay, she's just too dumb not to have an accent like that. And so the pack works through their troubles with Jacob because, like, you know, they kind of have to. They can't kill anybody in the Cullen clan because now one's been imprinted on. It's like a whole thing. Hold on a second, I'm gonna go lift that mountain. Exactly. She's technically getting weaker by the second because, like, when you're a newborn, that's when you're at your strongest. So, like, the longer you go until you reach your, like, final strength level, you're at your strongest. So the pack works through their troubles, and Renesmee is growing so fast, okay? Like, in a matter of months, she is like a child, okay? She's like, nobody knows how long she's gonna live because she's growing up so fast that they're like worried that she's gonna die within like a year or so. So they travel to Brazil mentioned, to follow up on legends that they worry, like, or blah, to follow up on legends because they're worried, you know? They're like, what if our daughter dies next week? What? There's people in Brazil who have different legends who we've heard of this happening before, but it's only ever been like suspected. It's never been confirmed. So they do all this traveling, and months later, this child is like 7 years old, okay? One of the vampires, we kind of met them before at the wedding because there was the one whose boyfriend got killed by the wolves, the Denali sisters. The blonde ones. One of the girls, just like standing on a mountain miles away, sees Isa Bedward's baby jumping up like 100 feet in the air to catch a snowflake to be like, Mom, look, I caught another one. And she freaks out, okay, because her mother was killed for having an immortal child. Now, an immortal child is different than what the baby is because an immortal child is a human child turned into a vampire. And it's super dangerous because they never mentally evolve past the age that they're turned at. So, like, they could have a temper tantrum and burn an entire village. It's crazy. But it's not when a human and a vampire copopulate. I don't think that's the right word, but, you know, we're going to go with it. So she runs off to be like, Volturi! The Cullens have committed a crime! And Arrow's like, what's this? Let me see my child. And takes her hand and reads all her thoughts. And he sees the child, but, like, nobody's giving context. She didn't let Bella explain anything because why would she? She saw a crime. She's like, I don't want to be fucking associated with you. I'm gonna go tell the bad guys. Let's eat the baby. Pretty much. So, you know, the Cullens are like, I think Alice has like a vision of this happening, and they're all freaking out because they're like, the Volturi's coming! It's so elaborate. It is! It's so elaborate! It's honestly, like, so good and so bad at the same time. Like, it's crazy, and it's cringy, but this is one of my comfort movies. So she just goes to them, yeah. So the Alice sees what's happening, right? And Edward is like, we need witnesses. The best chance we have is witnesses against the Volturi. Carlisle, can you ask your friends? Now, I think so you see all of these guys. These are all the vampire friends. They go one by one, going to all of these vampires, asking them for help. You wonder if he reads selective memories or gets a little more of the person's life. He probably, like, I really don't know. I think he just absorbs all the knowledge like a one-hit wonder. Like, everything you've ever thought, he can just tell it in, like, a second. But they go and collect all these friends. And now they all have different, like, powers and stuff. These two right here in the middle with, like, the black stripe across their eyes, the, like, war paint, they're from the Amazon. And one of them has the power to cloud your vision with whatever they want. So in one scene, they literally, like, she turns Edward and Bella's entire vision into a rainforest where they feel like they're actually there. What an invasive power. Yeah, it's so good. This girl right here, she has the power of electricity. So she can send like a jolt of an electric fence with one single touch of her finger to somebody. It's crazy. This guy right here has a power, like a water bending power. He's basically like a water bender. Avatar, you know? The water benders from them. So it's cool though. It's cool. And so this electric bitch is like, Edward, why didn't you tell us your wife was a shield? Unfortunately, she just can't shoot the electricity. I think she technically can. It's just a little less strong if it's not coming directly off her body. You thought vampires are just really strong, lol. They're like superheroes. Some of them have powers, some of them don't. Like, Edward's power is to read minds. Alice's power is to see the future. I think Emmett technically has like a little bit extra super strength. It's a whole thing. Super strong lore. It makes them all unique, yeah. But she's like, Edward, why didn't you tell me Bella was a shield? And Bella's like, what's a shield? And so she explains that like a shield is a defensive power, and it can block the abilities of any vampire powers. And Edward's like, oh my god, I can't believe I didn't see it before. That's why I couldn't even read your mind as a human, because you have all these powers. Like, you're a defensive person. So Bella then learns how to use that power to protect people outside of herself. Because, like, Electra Girl is like, look, just focus on Edward and protecting him. And then so she keeps shocking Edward over and over and over again until Bella learns how to, like, protect him from the electricity by projecting her power and her positive thoughts and manifestations onto Edward. So after that, she's all proud of herself. She's like, oh my god, I'm, like, the baddest bitch in town. And she's in her room, right? And then she thinks about this note that Alice left, which was just like a, bye, we're leaving. And she realizes it's from one of her books. They called that a shield. It means there's a precedent for that, meaning that there could be vampire hunters out there. True. There was the other vampire who was like not like a vampire hunter in the sense that he killed vampires, but he was a vampire hunter in the sense that he hunted for sport. So, like, that's kind of a thing. I don't know if they have humans that can kill vampires in this kind of lore. But, so she figures out the note from Alice was ripped from a book. And she's like, okay, maybe if I open that book, I can find more information. And she does. Alice gives her a name and a number to a lawyer who... This is lawyer. His entire job for the Cullen family is to provide doctored documentation. So he gives Bella a envelope that has documentation for Jacob and Renesmee. It's like false IDs, passports, birth certificates, all that. And she realizes, like, oh, Alice only asked for two sets of documentation. She didn't request any for me and Edward, which kind of tells Bella that, like, okay, my child's gonna be safe, Jacob's gonna be safe, but me and Edward might not get to be part of her life. Like, we might not get to be there. We might die in battle. So Bella decides she's gonna pack thousands of dollars, like fat stacks of cash, in a backpack with the documentation and a letter for Renesmee that, like, explains everything that's going on. And one of the vampires who is there to help her, like, or help everybody in battle, leaves because he sees her packing. And he's like, if you think you're gonna die, then, like, I'm backing out. Like, I'm not risking my life for a fruitless mission if you think somebody's gonna die. So he leaves. And she's just like, you know what? I get it. I get it. And then the rest of the vampires all night just hang out around a fire, swapping war stories. Some of them have been through the Civil War. Some of them have been through, oh my god, what's that one? I can't think of the war where, like, America separated from the British people. And, like, I should because I'm an American. Like, I should know that, but I can't remember. So we're just gonna, you know, we're gonna move on. But they're just swapping war stories of things. And then they notice that there's a pattern with a lot of these war stories of the Volturi being alerted to false accusations, then using that to slay entire families, but only leaving one or two with superpowers alive to come hang out. If that makes sense. Like, so basically their whole mental plan here would be, let's kill all the Cullens and keep Alice and Edward because their powers are so strong, if that makes sense. But they have a pattern of doing this with other families and clans. So the next day, after they swap all their war stories and everybody's like, okay, the Volturis are assholes, they meet them in an open field. And now it's this big alliance. It's the Cullens, it's the other vampires, and the wolves. And this whole time, because when the wolves start, like, getting nervous, more and more will just start shifting out of nowhere. Essentially, they're overpowered politicians that rule as aristocrats. True. So, wait, where was I? Yeah, they go, this whole alliance, go to meet the Volturi in open field. And they show the Volturi. They're like, hey, I know you think we have an immortal child. Not the case. If you let her, like, show you, she will show you that she is flesh and blood. She has a beating heart. Nothing was wrong here. Bella Bird this bitch. And Arrow's like, is this true? And so the child goes up and she touches, like, one of the faces and touches Arrow's face, which Arrow is very confused by because Arrow usually touches other people's hands. And so for the little girl to just come up and, like, completely avoid his hand and touch his face to show him her whole thoughts, like, it warms his heart a little bit, right? Here's a 4K vid of her birth, pretty much. 4K, that's good. He could literally see everything, though, from, like, conception to birth to now she's 7 years old after a couple months. Yeah, nobody's immune to Nessie. But he's all like, okay, like, maybe she's not an immortal child. Let's first deal with the false informer. Immediately beheads and burns the girl who went and was like, oh, they broke a law. Immediately kill her. No chance of escaping, right? She takes responsibility, too. She's like, yeah, I take all responsibility for this mistake. You can do whatever you need to do. So then they're debating whether the child is a threat, because they're like, okay, she might not be immortal, but we've never seen this before. How do we know this child isn't going to expose our kind to all of mankind, bringing us, like, more threats, we'd have to hide again, like, how do we know? Enter Alice and Jasper, who have been gone this whole movie because they were, like, actually doing their own thing. They were looking for more proof, and, like, they kind of knew that, like, Alice, or, like, them being there wasn't going to be helpful. They had to be elsewhere to, like, do stuff. I don't know. It's not fully explained, but it'll kind of explain. Are we still in Brazil? No, we're back in Forks now. Once they gathered everybody, they were back in Forks. They, like, traveled the world. One of the vampires is from London. He's really cool. I like him. So yeah, they're, like, debating. Alice and Jasper show up, and they're like, Alice is like, I can prove that the child will bring no harm. And so she goes up to Arrow, and she holds his hand and presents a vision of the future to him. Arrow is the leader, if I haven't clarified. I think I have. And then she pulls back, and she's like, it doesn't matter what I show you. And, like, the Volturi is about to attack Alice because she's like, no matter what I say, you're gonna fucking kill us anyways because you're just selfish. You're a selfish man. And so Carlisle jumps into action to try to, like, push her out of the way. But Arrow immediately destroys Carlisle, beheading him. His head is on the ground. It's wild. So everybody starts jumping into battle because, you know, nobody fucks with Dr. Carlisle. Everybody loves him. And so many are killed on both sides. It's this epic battle. It's so big, so grand. Leah, the wolf, the sister wolf, saves Esme. And it seems like it's really hopeless, right? Like it feels like a really hopeless battle. Everybody's dying on both sides. There's no real winning here. And the fight ends with Arrow being destroyed at the hands of Bella and Edward. And also that little bitch who causes everybody pain, she died. And when she died, I laughed. Alice literally fed her to the wolves like a snack. It was great. So, after he's destroyed, we're then transported back in time to Alice holding Arrow's hand, showing him the proof, meaning the entire battle and all the heartache and all the death was for nothing. All that PTSD that we just went through was for nothing. It was just a vision of what would happen if Arrow decided to fight. So Alice, or they're like, okay, but like, how do we know? Like, somebody else, I think it's the blonde boy. It's not the blonde girl who causes pain, but it's the blonde boy who's like, but how do we know? How do we know it for sure? Because, you know, he doesn't trust Alice, and like, Arrow suddenly changing his mind is very out of character. So Alice presents another halfling, which I don't know if that's what they're called, but that's what I'm going to call him. Another halfling who's been around for at least 100 years, and he's never caused any harm to befall anyone. He explains that his kind is very similar to vampires. His father was a vampire, his mother was mortal, but they can live off of animal blood or human blood. They have exceptional strength. It takes about 7 years for them to become full grown, and then they just stop growing when they reach like maturity stage. And so Arrow's like, you know what? Cool. We can leave now. The feud is over. And now there's these two vampires who still want to attack. It's these two brothers down at the bottom. I think they're like Vlad and something else. They still want to attack, but everybody's like, nah, bruh. We won for today. We won for today. Like, we don't need to fight. It's not worth it. So all the foreign vampires leave. They're like, okay, we can go back home now. This is great. That's basically another word for hobbit. Oh, well. It's a halfling, half vampire, half human. But yeah, so they all leave, right? And Bella, Jacob, and Edward get super excited because they realize they have way more time with Renesmee than they thought. And so as they're all like celebrating, like hugging each other, Alice gets another vision of the future, right? She gets a vision of the future where she sees Bella and Edward like happily hand off Renesmee to Jacob, and they walk off together in the sunset. And because Edward's always reading everybody's minds constantly, he like looks at her and smiles because he also sees the vision. So then the movie ends exactly how you would expect it to, with Bella and Edward back on the cold, damp ground in a field of flowers. And Bella's like, Edward, look what I can do. And so she drops her shield, and finally he gets to read her thoughts, which I swear that head is so empty. But now he's like, wow, now I really know. No one has ever loved anyone as much as you love me. Except with one exception, himself, because it's always about Edward. And he asks her to do it again because, you know, reading her mind once wasn't enough. And she's like, we have a long time. And he's like, forever. And then they smile and kiss, and the scene turns black and white, and the words forever pop on the screen. And 1,000 Years starts playing, and the movie's over. The end. Oh my god. I can't believe I got through all of the movies. It took me an hour to get through the first one. Why is that the background? There we go. 4 hours. Yeah. Okay, so like, we reached 2.5 hours to get through 5 movies. I should show you my Twilight summary. Hold on. Because this is wild. This is wild, and I kind of want to show you. What did you think? What did you think? Does it show? It's not showing. Okay, well, apparently I can't show you. That was a journey! You actually have no words? Movie classic! Absolutely, absolutely. The story that gets told as a drama, but that story is not. The hidden lore is very interesting to me. Yeah, it's so interesting. There's so much lore and stuff. And honestly, I read the books like when I was young, right? Like I read the books when I was young. I specifically remember sitting in an H&R Block while my sister was getting her taxes done and just like reading the whole book. I read them then. I haven't read them in so long it makes me want to reread them. Twilight needs an honest to God reboot because the lore is actually present. Right? There's apparently, I haven't read it, but there's an illustrated guide to Twilight that I would love to get my hands on because it explains how more of the vampires turned. And I think there's also one written from Edward's perspective, which I think that would just be so cool. Also, I feel like Stephanie Meyer could absolutely do one with, like, Jacob's perspective. I think that would be really cool because, like, I would love to hear Jacob's thoughts on everything. I'm so team Jacob. He's such a stand-up guy. He would absolutely be a better parent, even if he hasn't printed on their daughter. It's so good. Every time I watch the movie, I get, like, or the series, I get more information, you know? Gosh, I want to show you my 10 page. It was 8 pages earlier, but I changed the spacing so I could read it better. So much writing on this. You would love to know what he thought when he stripped in front of Charlie. Well, he was thinking that if he exposed himself, then the only person he's endangering is really himself. And it will mentally prepare Charlie for the idea that Bella's a monster without telling him that Bella's a monster. Came out of the closet. Pretty much! I'm sorry, Charlie. I never meant to hurt you. I never meant to make you cry, but the people of this town are monsters. He's such a best boy. Yes, he's such a good boy. Oh my god, I want to give him all the dog treats. You know? I would feed him fresh chicken and steak every day. And he would be so happy. Sure, I'll save changes. I don't know what I changed in that document, but... It's like, it's such a good movie. Series. I keep saying movie like it's one movie, but that's because every time I watch it, I binge it. I'll watch like the first 2 movies one day, the 3rd movie the next day, and then the last 2 in one sitting because it's just so good. It's so good. And like, it's terrible because like some of the scenes are really, really cringy. Some of them are really bad. I'm wondering, do I have... There's this one video that's like Bella size Twilight. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna show you something, and it's gonna be silly. So, let's... Properties. When I tell you Bella does nothing but breathe really freaking annoyingly, I mean it, okay? Is this gonna work? Of course not. Oh, of course not! It's not letting me add things. Reset? Oh! There we go. Okay, that would be why. Let me make sure my volume's on for it. Change that. Her breathing is so bad. Okay, are you ready for this? Bella, breathe like a human! This goes on for 1 minute and 26 seconds, okay? Like, I'm not gonna make you watch the whole thing, but once you notice it, you can't stop noticing it. Kind of bummed that this movie ends in an easy way when most of the story is so difficult, right? Right? I look frozen. I'm supposed to be Wednesday Addams. I'm supposed to be Wednesday Addams. They tried to make me look really goth and, like, kinda dead. But I could be a vampire, you know? You never know. What movie producers thinks girls breathe like? Exactly! Like, why? Will the gasp when she's making love be in there too? Probably. I haven't, like, watched the whole thing in a while because, you know, why would I look that up a lot? But it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. She doesn't know how to breathe like a human. There's another one where it's like Bella and Edward just awkwardly staring at each other, right? Like, they just every time they make glances, it's so bad. What if she gets hurt? Yeah, I don't know, man. Anywho, I think that about wraps it up for tonight. What else to talk about? I've talked about everything in Twilight. I even went over the family tree. Family tree, that's the word I'm looking for. I can't believe how long I spent on this presentation. I've spent so much time researching and now all I can think of is Twilight. But also all I can think of is things I've already said. Oh, you know what? You know what? Okay, one more fun fact about Twilight. Jasper, the one who looks like he's always in pain. Fun fact, he does all his own stunts. So, he was doing all his own stunts and he broke a rib, or like at least fractured it. He injured himself pretty badly. And he didn't want to miss out on the final battle, so he just didn't tell cast and crew. He just didn't say anything and continued working with his broken ribs. Now you're curious what you would do different if you haven't mentioned it. The only thing I would do different, honestly, I don't even think I could do anything different because it just, the whole story tells itself. Like, as much as I want to see her with Jacob, I can appreciate the story for what it is, you know? Wow, very strong will, commitment to character. Yeah, right? But I think it's ironic because, you know, Jessica's like, the one who always looks like he's in pain. That's Jasper. And then literally later on in the movie, the reason he still looks like he's in pain is because he's literally in pain. Commitment to bit. Now I have like, I have died every day waiting for you. Darling, don't be afraid. I have loved you for 1,000 years. I love you for 1,000 more. Stuck in my head. Surprise karaoke! Yeah! I might have a karaoke version of that. We could try it. 1,000 years. Karaoke. I'm like a little bit committed to hitting 3 hours. I haven't hit 3 hours in a stream for a minute, so like it could be fun. Okay. Oh, that's really loud. Okay. Oops, doesn't start there. I'm breathing like Bella. Heart beats fast, colors and promises. How to be brave? How can I love when I'm afraid to fall? But watching you stand alone, all of my doubt suddenly goes away somehow. One step closer. I have died every day waiting for you. Darling, don't be afraid. I have loved you for 1,000 I'll love you for 1,000 more. I still have my cough from my cold. Stand still, beauty and all she is. I will be brave, I will not let anything take away what's standing in front of me. Every breath, every hour has come to this. One step closer. I have died every day waiting for you. Darling, don't be afraid. I have loved you for 1,000 years. I love you for 1,000 more. I believed I would find you. Time has brought your heart to me, and I have loved you for 1,000 years. I'll love you for 1,000 more. I'm dying. Dying on just a little bit. Oops. One step closer. One step closer. I have died every day waiting for you. Darling, don't be afraid. I have loved you for 1,000 years. I'll love you for 1,000 more. And all along I believed I would find you. Time has brought your heart to me, and I have loved you for 1,000 years. I'll love you for 1,000 more. Woo! I think that's it. Yeah! I did it. Sort of. I got through it. Barely by choking, but it's fine. It's fine! It's a good song. It's such a good song. But now I am congested. I never realized that, like, the end credits music, specifically in the first one, were Radiohead and Paramore until, like, yesterday. I don't know how I didn't realize that. Thank you, thank you! I live for the applause, applause. I feel like there's a Wednesday Addams song that I don't remember, but I'm not gonna put you all through that. Made you cry, Joy? Thank you! Thank you! I aim to please. Oh my god, and that's another fun fact. I probably have talked about this before, but I know I haven't mentioned it during this stream. Everybody's familiar with 50 Shades of Grey, correct? Is everybody familiar with the fact that 50 Shades of Grey literally started as a fan fiction of Twilight? It started as a naughty fan fiction of Twilight, and you can't tell me that doesn't make sense after hearing how, like, controlling, demanding, and needy Edward is. It did. Yes! Yes! It did! And that's why, like, there's, like, a little bit of a love triangle in, like, the second book with one of her best friends. I think his name's Joe. It's been a very long time. I read that at a very inappropriate time in my life. I read that way too young. I wouldn't even be surprised if it's called 50 Shades of Grey because all of the vampires are different shades of gray skin. Oh, Christian, Elliot, Mia. Yeah, I don't know what his name is, but one of her friends is supposed to be Jacob, and then, like, Mr. Grey is supposed to be Edward. It's the worst example of the butterfly effect, honestly. Honestly. Is it, though? I mean, a lot of people enjoyed that book. A lot of moms liked reading that. No. It's so good. It's so good. Not 50 Shades of Grey, Twilight. Twilight's so good. Twilight's so good it inspired everything. I remember though, like my sister read 50 Shades before me and she highlighted everything that was grammatically incorrect in the book. She took a literal red pen and a highlighter and highlighted grammatical mistakes and like put little carrots with corrections all over the pages because it was a fan fiction. It was never supposed to be published as a book until it was. A lot of moms loved it. Implies that all the girls grew up watching Twilight, graduated to reading 50 Shades of Grey. I read that. I don't know if this is a doxing fact. Hold on. Let me Google when that came out so I can determine if I can share this or not. It came out in the movie came out in 2015. Book release date. Okay, it came out in 2011, the book, which is like 3 years after the first movie. I was not a teenager. No, I was a little bit of a teenager. We're gonna say that Billie was less than 16 when she read this book. And I read all of them. They're not very good. They're not very good. But it's something. At least I was reading. I remember, actually, I was in school, and, like, we had assigned reading, but, like, not assigned books, but, like, we had a task. It was a sheet, and you had to, like, write the name of the book, the author, and then, like, what parts of it you read. And so I specifically wrote 50 Shades under title, and then I wrote whatever her fucking name is under author, and then I wrote in the little, like, description, explicit. And my teacher didn't know what to do because technically I read, and I did the assigned reading, but I knew better than to be like, and then Christian Grey grabbed a fucking vibrator and was like, you know what I mean? Like, I knew better. Parental control, Doko. I had no parental control. Very HD description of appearances in the book. Yeah, bruh. I had like very little parental control. I've told you guys before that like my mom took me to see Magic Mike in theaters when I was way too young to watch it because my sister was like, "You should take Billie to go see it. It's about dancers." It's technically about dancers, but my mother did no research. No research. An image was painted in your mind and you can't scrub it off. I'm so sorry I scarred you. But it's fun. Sometimes it's fun to scar people, just a little bit. And only mentally. Let's see. What other... If you ever, like, wow, Billie seems so old sometimes. It's because I had no supervision. 21st century mother-daughter bonding. Yeah. Basically. And then I had a sleepover where we watched the first and second one, and my dad insisted on sitting in the living room the whole time, making it awkward. Because he was like, you know how I'm going to get these girls to not want to watch this movie ever again? I'm going to make it incredibly awkward. Good night. Good night, starry skies. Okay. I've been going for almost 3 hours, and I think I've shared probably too much. I made it awkward. So I think I'm gonna go before I say any more. very awkward things. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and listening to me rant about Twilight. I actually really enjoyed this stream. I kind of want to do more like it, but I'm going to have to do more deep dives on more movies and stuff. So they might just take a little more time, but I'm really excited about the concept. So, thank you so much, and I love you all. Bye!